Chapter 1068. Accept a disciple. Hearing Lu Yinyue's request, Gohan smiled bitterly. I'm already a cripple. I'm not qualified to be your master. No. Lu Yinyue shook her head firmly. Lord Lung Qingxiu, you're not a cripple. Otherwise, all of us would have died here today. In fact, it was you who saved us. Get up. I won't accept you as a disciple. Gohan helped Lu Yinyue up. One of my disciples is in trouble now. I won't accept any other disciple before rescuing her. But Lord Lung Qingxiu, are you willing to take away all your swordsmanship and not leave anything behind? Lu Yinyue said with some excitement. Yinyue is not talented, but I'm willing to inherit swordsmanship on behalf of Master, to make Master famous, and to make Master's name known throughout the world. If I want to make a name for myself, why would I need your help? Gohan smiled, and he couldn't help but recall what happened 3 years ago. 3 years ago, he also knelt in front of Wuzhong Shifang and asked Wuzhong Shifang to accept him as a disciple. In the end, Wuzhong Shifang rejected him. Therefore, Gohan came up with a wicked idea and said to Lu Yinyue, if you really want to be my disciple, it's not impossible. It's just that I never accept students without talent. If you can get first place in this year's Octagon tournament, then I can accept you as a disciple. First place in the Octagon tournament. Lu Yinyue's face stiffened when she heard Gohan's request, and she said pitifully, Lord Lung Qingxiu, it's not like you don't know that since Lord Gohan 3 years ago, our Yuzhong city has been at the bottom of the Octagon tournament for years. How can I get first place in the Octagon tournament? Really, it's been at the bottom for 3 years in a row. In the 3 years that Gohan was in Shanghai Pass, he had never cared about the Octagon tournament. Therefore, when he heard that Yuzhong City had been at the bottom for 3 years in a row, he just felt unhappy. If that's the case, then all the more reason for you to get first place. Gohan rubbed his nose. How about this? I won't take you as my disciple now, but I can teach you some sword techniques. You'll be traveling during the day and practicing with me at night. I remember that the 8 Academies assembly should have ended last month. There's still 11 months left. I am confident that I can help you be reborn. 3 years ago, after the August conference ended, Gohan hurriedly came to Shanghai Pass for relief within a day or two. Therefore, Gohan speculated that this year's 8 Academies assembly would end within a month, so he still had 11 months. Lord Lung Qingxiu, don't you know? Hearing Lung Qingxiu's words, Lu Yinyue's face showed a puzzled expression. This year, because of Lord Ingzheng, the 8 Academies assembly was held 6 months in advance. There are only 5 months left before the next 8 Academies assembly. This Ingzheng has never done anything good. Gohan muttered, 5 months is actually enough. As long as you follow me and learn seriously, the first place is not far from you. But Lord, the number of participants in the 8 Academies assembly was personally decided by the dean. I heard that this year's number of participants has already been decided. It's impossible for the dean to let me, a newcomer who just became a sword bearer a month ago, go on stage. Lu Yinyue said again, why do you have so much nonsense to say? Gohan's face showed a trace of displeasure. Since I let you participate in the 8 Academies assembly, I am confident that I can get you a place. You just need to follow me and practice swordsmanship. From now on, if you say another word of nonsense, don't even think about worshipping me as your master. Yes, Lord Lung Qingxiu. Lu Yinyue had no choice but to shut her mouth. Gohan had always been a man of action. He would do what he said. That night, Gohan began to teach Lu Yinyue some basics of swordsmanship. Although Gohan had accepted Lu Shihua as a disciple before, Gohan had accepted her more because he saw the potential of Lu Shihua to become an emperor sword-level sword-bearer. He only taught her swordsmanship for a few days and then stopped teaching her carefully. He only took out a few minutes every day to ask Lu Shihua about her progress, correct her mistakes, and point out the direction to move forward. That was all. Among Gohan's 3 most powerful swordsmanship techniques, 9 swords of mysterious heaven, 3 green lotus swords, and chaos sword technique, other than teaching Lu Shihua some basic techniques and 9 swords of mysterious heaven, He did not pass on the essence of these 3 swordsmanship techniques to her. However, the treatment that Lu Yunue received was completely different. Because she had lost all her sword essence and one of her legs, Gahan could do nothing but teach Lu Yunue swordsmanship. In the end, Gahan taught her very seriously. Lu Yunue was a great swordsmanship genius. She could understand many swordsmanship techniques with just a few pointers. In just a few short nights, Lu Yunue's swordsmanship had improved by a terrifying amount. On the 5th night that Gahan taught her, Lu Yunue used Gahan's heavenly sword to spar with her sword lady. In the end, she defeated her sword lady. This was an extremely amazing achievement. Even though Lu Yunue's sword lady was an unremarkable man-made sword lady, she had 70 to 80% of her original swordsmanship. After all, every sword lady's swordsmanship was accumulated through hundreds of battles. Even if a normal human trained hard for 30 years, they would not be able to defeat a sword lady. This was why there were so few sword masters. In the end, in just 5 nights, Lu Yunue defeated her sword lady in a spar. Of course, this was only in terms of spar. As they dissected one move at a time, Lu Yunue could easily think about what sword technique to use to defeat her opponent. However, this was completely different in actual combat. Lu Yunue's opponent would not give her the chance to think about her next move. Thus, in actual combat, Lu Yunue was still not her sword lady's match. However, Gahan believed that in a month at most, Lu Yunue would be able to completely defeat her sword lady. This was something that Gahan had trained for 2 years to achieve. As the days passed, the team got closer and closer to the end of the treasure trove. The number of Yuan Ko they encountered in their daily battles also increased. Under Gahan's deliberate orders, Lu Yunue no longer released her sword lady. Instead, she used her sword lady to fight different Yuan Kos. In the beginning, Lu Yunue had almost died at the hands of Yuan Ko due to her lack of actual combat experience. As her combat experience continued to increase, Lu Yunue became more and more proficient. Lu Yunue could also fight ordinary mouse and tiger Yuan Kos without Gahan's command. These changes in Lu Yunue were also seen by the other sword bearers in the team. When they first met Lu Yunue, she was just a complete novice. She could not even do something as simple as releasing her sword lady. She was the weakest existence in the team, and no one took her seriously. However, at this moment, Lu Yunue could hold her sword lady and fight with those Yuan Kos. She even won repeatedly. She was not like them, who could only hide in a hidden place and command their sword lady to fight from afar. The difference in strength was obvious. It was foreseeable that after a period of time, Lu Yunue would be able to completely leave them behind. She would go from someone who looked up to them to someone who they had to look up to. This made the other sword bearers envious and jealous. Of course, they knew that it was impossible for Lu Yunue's comprehension ability to comprehend such amazing swordsmanship. Instead, there was an expert secretly teaching her. Lu Yunue had such a shocking change after meeting Gahan. Furthermore, Lu Yunue and Gahan were always together. Even a fool could guess that the expert behind the scenes was undoubtedly Gahan. At this moment, the other sword bearers were so regretful that they beat their chests and stamped their feet. They saw that Gahan's purple palace was destroyed and thought that Gahan was already useless. They did not even think of treating him with respect and courtesy. In the end, Lu Yunue, this silly girl, ran over and even shared her precious food with him. Originally, they thought that Lu Yunue was a ridiculous saint who had a burden. They were prepared to see Lu Yunue make a fool of herself. In the end, they did not expect Lu Yunue to pick up a big treasure. She had received the full guidance of an expert, and her strength had increased by a terrifying amount. Therefore, the other sword bearers in the team also took out their treasured food to curry favor with Gahan. They wanted to become Gahan's disciple as well. However, the detestable thing was that although Gahan had eaten all of their food, he did not mention anything about teaching. This made the sword bearers beat their chests and stamp their feet in anger, but they could not do anything to Gahan. According to the map, the treasure is buried on the mountain in front of us. On the 12th day after Gahan joined the team finally arrived at the foot of the treasure mountain that was marked on the map. According to the map, the treasure was in a cave halfway up the mountain. However, this cave was extremely hidden and was surrounded by layers of vines. Ordinary people would not be able to find this cave. However, at midnight, when a moon rose into the sky, the place where the moonlight shone the brightest would be the place where the treasure was buried. Everyone could follow the directions of the moonlight to find the final treasure. Since they had to rely on a moonlight to guide them, the team could only set up camp at the foot of the mountain and wait until midnight. Because they were only one step away from the treasure, all the team members became very excited. After everyone ate and drank to their heart's content, they began to chat happily. At first, these people's topics were topics that Gahan was not interested in. However, at a certain moment, this sentence suddenly popped out of Su Junjia's mouth. Did you know? The night before our personal terminals were damaged, I received a push notification. The Sword Committee issued a wanted order for our Yuzhong City's sword-bearer, Gahan. It was this sentence that instantly made Gahan's ears perk up. Chapter 1069. Gahan, you're talking about our Yuzhong City's previous sword pavilion master, Gahan? Chu Hanming exclaimed. Besides Gahan, who else could Gahan be? Su Junjia snorted. Not only is he the previous sword pavilion master, but he is also the master of the current sword pavilion master. By the way, have you seen the live TV broadcast? How powerful was Gahan in court at that time? He was just a famous sword-level swordsman, but even a spiritual sword-level swordsman was no match for him, and his mouth made everyone speechless. He won the final debate and was acquitted. Gahan was innocent in the first place. Chu Hanming said loudly, "Those who try to put Gahan on trial are crazy. If it weren't for Gahan, the whole of Yuzhong City might not even exist. They actually made things difficult for Gahan, for a useless old coffin. Is an old man worth more than a top swordsman? Those who try to put Gahan on trial are all be asterisk starts. I despise people like that the most." Hey, you can't say that. Li Xiangtian took over the conversation. The life of a swordsman is a human life, and the life of an ordinary person is also a human life. That old man did it to protect the property of Yuzhong City. How can his life be less important than Gahan's? That's good. So the whole of Yuzhong City should be buried with this old man. Chu Hanming's anger rose. He waved his fists excitedly, looking like he wanted to fight someone. Li Xiangtian was so scared that he quickly shut his mouth. In terms of physique, 3 Li Xiangtians added together were not as strong as one Chu Hanming. Come on, why did you use your fist to talk about your brother? Shang Yi reprimanded Chu Hanming. What do you mean by talking about others? Maybe the people around us will encounter this kind of situation in the future. Now that we can't really argue, which side do we stand on? Chu Hanming looked at Shang Yi and asked, Captain, tell me, between Gahan and that old man, which side do you think you'll be on? Shang Yi rolled his eyes at Chu Hanming and did not answer his question directly. Instead, he said, I voted for Gahan. Hee. Shang Yi was obviously on Chu Hanming's side. So Chu Hanming asked Su Junjia, Junjia, who did you vote for back then? I wasn't a sword bearer back then, so I couldn't be bothered to vote. But if I had to say it, I would still stand on Gahan's side. Yuzhong City might still exist without Gahan, but the casualties would definitely be more severe. From a purely personal perspective, I support Gahan, Su Junjia replied with a smile. Yu, what do you think? Chu Hanming asked the usually silent Yu. Gahan. Yu's reply was clean and direct, in line with his personality. What about you, Qin Liang? Chu Hanming turned to Qin Liang. When I voted for that old man. Finally, there was a sword bearer who stood on the opposite side of Gahan. However, Qin Liang immediately changed the topic and said, It's just that I wasn't a sword bearer back then. As an ordinary person, of course I would stand on the side of ordinary people. Now that I'm a sword bearer, I naturally have to stand on the side of the sword bearer. So, if I were to vote now, I would definitely vote for Gahan. Look at your butt. Chu Hanming muttered, then turned to Li Xiangtian. You actually dared to talk back to me just now. You must have voted against it. F***CKU. I'm not from Yuzhong City. How could I have the right to vote? Li Xiangtian sneered. Only then did Chu Hanming remember that Li Xiangtian was a sword-bearer from Yanjing City. It was just that he had always lived in Yuzhong City. So, in reality, Li Xiangtian did not have the right to vote. However, even if we sympathize with that old man, we still have to sit on the sword-bearer's side. If I were given the chance to vote, I would definitely vote for Gahan. I've studied that matter. In fact, Gahan didn't need to kill the old man at that time. He just needed to get someone to drive the old man away. It wouldn't have taken much time. At that time, Guhan had only killed them to vent the anger in his heart. Whether he died or not did not affect the overall situation of Yuzhong City. Before Chu Hanming could ask him, Zhuo Ryu took the initiative to speak. So, you think that Gahan is wrong? Chu Hanming was a little happy to hear Zhuo Ryu say this. After all, if everyone agreed, then there would be no fun in talking about this topic. I didn't say that Gahan is wrong. I just said that it doesn't matter whether the old man dies or not. Zhuo Ryu suddenly pulled out the sword in his hand. It was a Fusong sword. Gahan had heard from Lu Yunyue that this sword was called Kondo Bunzai. It was a typical Fusong Tang sword. If I were Gahan, I would also kill that old man. Those who stand in my way deserve to die. It turned out that Zhuo Ryu was a cruel and merciless guy. Yunhua, what do you say? Chu Hanming finally asked Lu Yunyue. Can I not answer this question? Lu Yunyue smiled bitterly. The old man who died was my uncle. Although we are not related by blood, we are relatives. Hungry, then I won't ask you. Chu Hanming's face stiffened. He never thought that Lu Yunyue was a blood relative of that old man. Gahan, who was sitting beside Lu Yunyue, also did not expect this. The so-called reincarnation of heaven and earth, retribution. He didn't expect that his involvement with that old man hadn't ended yet. The heavens had actually sent that old man's grandniece to him. What was even more ridiculous was that he had accepted his grandniece as his disciple. The things that happened in this world were really too wonderful. It suddenly caught him off guard. Senior Lung Qingqiu, what do you think? Seeing that he couldn't get the answer he wanted from Lu Yunyue, Chu Hanming could only ask Lung Qingqiu again. To Gahan, this was a very strange question. Hearing these people's comments about him, Gahan's heart was filled with mixed feelings. He didn't expect that everyone would stand on his side. Even that annoying Li Xiangtian changed his mind in the end. Gahan could tell that none of them were lying. They were all speaking from the bottom of their hearts. They were truly standing on Gahan's side. I can't say it's right, but I can't say it's wrong either. Guhan revealed a meaningful expression. He only did what he thought was right. As for how others evaluate him, it doesn't matter to him. He has always done things with a clear conscience. You speak as if you know that Gahan guy. Although Li Xiangtian stood on Guhan's side in the end, he was still very dissatisfied with Lung Qingqiu. Thus, he couldn't help but mock. Since you're so familiar with this Gahan, then do you have a photo of you and Gahan that you can show us? I don't have a photo with Gahan, and that's not something that could be said by people who are familiar with each other. Guhan retorted without any trace of politeness. Right? Suddenly, Su Junja patted his head. Actually, I always felt that Senior Lung Qingqiu looked a little familiar, but I couldn't remember where I'd seen him before. Today, when I was talking about Lord Gahan, I suddenly remembered that Senior Lung Qingqiu looked a little similar to Lord Gahan. Is that so? Why don't I think so? When Chu Hanming heard Su Junja's words, he immediately sized up Gahan carefully, then shook his head and said, No, not at all. Senior Lung Qingqiu, please forgive this junior for being blunt, but Lord Guhan is much more handsome than you. Is that so? Gahan finally couldn't help but laugh. I'm indeed not as handsome as him. All right, Su Junjia, what did you say about that Gahan? Why did the Sword Committee put him on the wanted list? Oh, it's all this Chu Hanming's fault. He changed the topic. Su Junjia glared at Chu Hanming, then continued. Didn't that Lord Gahan later go to Shanghai Pass to guard, and even became the guardian of Taiying Garrison, together with Lord Yingzheng and Lord Liu Ling, killed all the great magi, and destroyed Zhu Wu's blood essence, completely ending the war of attrition in Shanghai Pass, and made a great contribution to mankind? Before Su Junjia could finish, Li Xiangtian hurriedly interrupted. What great contribution? That has nothing to do with Gahan. This is all Lord Ingzhang's credit. Gohan is just a lucky spectator. What does destroying Zhu Wu's blood essence have to do with him? TSK. Even if the main credit belongs to Lord Ingzhang, Lord Ingzhang himself said that it was Lord Gohan's brilliant plan that helped him find the Wu people's nest. Without Lord Gohan's plan, how could Lord Ingzhang possibly destroy Zhu Wu's blood essence? Su Junjie retorted discontentedly. However, only Gohan himself knew the bitterness in his words. It was true that Ingzhang did not take all the credit, but he had put Gohan's credit on the plan. He only said that it was Gohan who came up with the idea of using his medical cabin as bait to find the Wu people's nest, but all the credit in the underground palace was taken by Ingzhang. Because of the agreement between Gohan and Ingzhang, he had never refuted Ingzhang's statement. In the end, Gohan was completely marginalized and became just a decoration. Of course, all of this was within Gohan's expectations. He had long since stopped caring about these things. I heard that the day Lord Mellauer was injured was the day Lord Gohan left Shanghai Pass after 3 years. However, considering that the Wu people still have a Grand Witch, Chang'e, in hiding, and that a drop of Zhu Wu's blood essence has yet to be found, the Sword Union still hoped that there would be a powerful swordsman guarding Shanghai Pass to deal with sudden crises. Therefore, they decided to let Gohan guard Shanghai Pass for 3 years. In the end, Lord Gohan was unwilling. Not only did he injure the executive director of Shanghai Pass who came to deliver the order, he even defeated the sword spirit of Guei Palace who came to stop him. In the end, Su Junjie is suddenly paused to keep everyone in suspense. In the end, what happened? Hurry up and tell us. Suddenly, a female voice came from behind them. Everyone was startled, but their faces were immediately filled with excitement. Lord Mellauer, you've finally woken up. It turned out that the famous swordsman, Mellauer, had finally woken up from the medical cabin. Chapter 1070. This was the first time Gohan had seen the only famed swordsman in the team, Mellauer. She was a woman with obvious Western features. She had a tall figure, a plump opie, and a head of pure gold hair. This was a rare sight in the Western headquarters cities where the Chinese bloodline was almost completely integrated. Gohan was very curious as to why such a Western woman would suddenly request to join the team. Who is this? Mellauer also noticed Gohan's presence and immediately frowned. He is a famed swordsman we saved along the way, Lord Lung Qingxiu. However, because his Zifu was destroyed by Yuan Ko, he can only temporarily move with us. Lu Yingyue immediately explained. A famed swordsman. Mellauer looked at Gohan and asked, "Where are your 3 sword maidens?" Apart from the treasured sword maidens, the other sword maidens were placed in my dimensional pocket before their Zifu was destroyed. Now that I have lost my sword essence, I can no longer open my dimensional pocket. How can I retrieve my sword maidens? Gohan explained. Oh, then, can you lend me your treasured sword maidens? Mellauer asked again. Gohan hesitated for a moment. His appearance had changed over the past 3 years. Coupled with his sloppy appearance, it was understandable that no one could recognize him. However, his Heaven-Reliant sword was different. His Heaven-Reliant sword was the #1 sword maiden among the treasured sword maidens. These inexperienced brats might not be able to recognize it, but an experienced famed swordsman like Mellauer might be able to. However, after thinking about it carefully, Gohan handed the Heaven-Reliant sword to the other party. If he was recognized, then so be it. Was he supposed to be afraid of these famed sword maidens? It really is a treasured sword. Mellauer looked at the Heaven-Reliant sword and nodded. He then casually threw the sword back to Gohan and proudly said, "However, it looks like it's just a mediocre sword maiden among the treasured sword maidens. It's no big deal. Looks like this woman does not recognize the Heaven-Reliant sword either." Gohan quietly let out a sigh of relief, and Mellauer was no longer interested in talking to Gohan, so he turned to Su Junjie to continue talking about Gohan. This Lord Gohan is truly formidable and also very vicious. Not only did he defeat the sword spirit of the Guei Hall as a famous sword wielder, he even stripped him naked and threw him in front of the Yanjing Feng Yin TV station's live show, Exploring the Ruins. He threw the sword spirit of the Gui Hall out in front of everyone in Beijing. The whole process was broadcasted live by the Yinjing Feng Yin TV station. Although the program's signal will be cut off very soon, there's no guarantee that they will record it. In the end, the entire video was recorded and uploaded to the internet. Now, the sword spirit of the Gui Palace has become a complete joke. He has even been given the nickname 12th Prince. 12th Prince? What does this nickname mean? Why would he be given such a nickname? Chu Hanming asked in confusion. When the sword spirit of the Gui Hall was thrown from the sky, his body was completely naked without any mosaic. Everything was shown on the TV. One had to know that even the signal of the live broadcast television was 8640p. This could be said to be extremely clear. In the end, someone analyzed the video and concluded that even if the sword spirit of the Gui Hall's little brother was fully erect, it would only be 12 centimeters tall. In the end, the sword spirit of the Gui Hall was given the nickname 12th Prince. Ha ha! Su Junjie couldn't help but burst into laughter after he finished speaking. Then, the others in the team also burst into laughter. The atmosphere suddenly became very cheerful. You guys said that the sword spirit of the Gui Hall is a dignified, spiritual sword rank swordsman. Many ancient sword rank and famed sword rank swordsmen were scared to death when they heard the name of the sword spirit of the Gui Hall. You guys have only become a swordsman in the past 2 years, so you don't know that a few years ago, every ancient sword rank and famed sword rank swordsman was most afraid to hear the name of the sword spirit of the Gui Hall. They were afraid that they would be chosen by the sword spirit of the Gui Hall and be dragged to the Shanghai Pass, where the death rate was as high as 40%. Who would have thought that such a great man would end up like this? It's so funny. Ha ha! Enough! Before Su Junjie finished laughing, Mel Lauer suddenly slapped Su Junjie's head hard and sent him flying. He was so scared that he was stunned. Do you think a lowly guy like you can mock the Crown Prince of London? Mel Lauer cursed. Only then did the others remember that Mel Lauer was the sword-bearer of the city of London. The sword spirit of the Gui Hall was the pride of London. Why would Mel Lauer react so violently that he would slap the laughing Su Junjie away? This Gahan, he has balls. Just you wait. Mel Lauer, will teach him a lesson with my own hands. I will let him know that London is not a place that could be humiliated so easily. Mel Lauer said loudly. Lord Gahan can defeat the sword spirit of the Gui Hall. What right do you, a mere famed sword rank swordsman, have to seek revenge? Be careful that he doesn't strip you naked and throw you out. All the Yuzhong sword rank swordsmen said to themselves. They were very protective of their own people. As long as they were from the same base city, they would naturally treat them as one of their own. They might fight when there were no outsiders, but they would still protect their own people in front of outsiders. However, Mel Lauer was a famed sword rank swordsman. No one present could defeat her. They could only say this in their minds. What happened after that? What happened next? Mel Lauer had just sent Su Junjie flying, so he immediately asked Su Junjie. Su Junjie was gritting his teeth in hatred, but he had to force a smile and continued. The sword spirit of the Gui Hall was of noble character and unquestionable integrity. He said that he didn't want to hold Gahan responsible, and he wouldn't send a warrant for the London sword rank swordsman to seek revenge on Gahan. However, Lord Ingzheng has publicly stated that Guhan's behavior is an insult to the Sword Committee Association, and it has destroyed the harmonious relationship between London, Yinjing, and Yuzhong City. Therefore, such behavior must be severely punished. He has called on all sword-bearers to immediately report Guhan's whereabouts once they find him, or simply capture him and hand him over to the Sword Committee Association. That way, they will be rewarded greatly by the Sword Committee Association. At least the Sword Committee and Lord Ingzheng knew the gravity of the matter and upheld justice. Otherwise, our crown prince might have been generous enough to let this bastard go. Mel Lauer said hatefully. However, after thinking about it, he revealed a doubtful expression. But this Guhan is a famed sword rank swordsman, and he even defeated the crown prince. I'm afraid that even a spiritual sword rank swordsman would find it difficult to deal with him. Only a mortal sword rank swordsman could capture him. Why would the sword committee send all the swordsmen to capture him? Ordinary sword rank swordsmen are no match for him. I heard that Gahan was seriously injured during the battle with the sword spirit of the Gué Hall. His mind was sealed by the sword spirit of the Gué Hall, so he's just an ordinary person now. At the same time, according to the analysis of the route he took, he should have returned to Yuzhong City. He might be hiding somewhere in Yuzhong City at this moment. So the sword committee called for everyone to capture him, Su Junjie explained. That's what I said. How could the crown prince be defeated by this damned guy so easily? As expected, he didn't have a good ending either. Mel Lauer nodded in satisfaction after hearing Su Junjie's words. She then asked, "Where are we now?" After knowing that the party had arrived at the foot of the mountain where the treasure was hidden, and that they only needed to wait until the moon hung high in the sky to find the location of the treasure, she was very satisfied and found a place to sleep. Although she had just crawled out of the medical pod, and although she had slept in a medical pod for more than 10 days, it seemed that Miss Millar was still asleep. The others were happy that Mel Lauer did not disturb them. Just like that, the sky gradually darkened until it was so dark that they could not see their own fingers in front of them. Originally, Gahan still had to teach Lu Yunyue swordsmanship that night, but at this moment, Lu Yunyue obviously did not have the mood to continue practicing. Gahan also understood this, so he did not say much. He waited with the others for dawn to come. During this time, Mel Lauer woke up again and joined the waiting team. It was finally dawn, when a new day began. The bright moonlight shone on the mountain peak in the distance. At this moment, everyone suddenly saw a small suddenly light up at the top of the mountain. It looked like someone had turned on a light bulb in the mountain. There must be something reflecting light there. Shangyi said, when a moonlight shines from a certain angle, it will cause that thing to reflect light. That's why we suddenly saw something light up there. I understand now. This is the hint that Lu Yunyue's ancestor gave to her descendants. The location of a light must be the location where the treasure is buried. There's no mistake, Li Xiangtian said excitedly. Great. That was great. We finally found a location of the treasure. Everyone cheered in unison. Only Shangyi remained calm. He picked up a professional camera and took photos from various angles. At the same time, he compared the photos with the mountain photos taken during the day. Through this method, he determined the location of the light spot. Otherwise, even if he remembered the location of the light spot, once the sky brightened, it would be impossible to determine the location of the light spot with the naked eye. Sure enough, after less than 3 minutes, as the angle of the moonlight changed, the light spot immediately dimmed and completely disappeared as if it had never existed before. Their goal had been achieved. After arranging the candidates for the night watch, everyone fell asleep one after another. Of course, Gahan was no exception. However, when he was half asleep, Gahan suddenly felt a biting, cold, murderous aura approaching him. However, Gahan did not immediately get up. Instead, he pretended to be still asleep. When a cold sword was placed on his neck, Gahan pretended to wake up. Lord Gahan, I didn't expect to meet you here. I've worn out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find you by chance. This was Melauer's voice. It seemed that this woman had completely pretended not to recognize Gahan during the day. In fact, she had already recognized Gahan. Chapter 1071. All right, since you recognize me, come out and talk with me. Don't wake up the others. Gahan didn't pretend to be asleep and directly pushed the sword away from his neck, looking like he didn't care about Melauer at all. Don't move, we'll talk here. Melauer looked at him and immediately put the sword back. If you have the ability, then kill me. If you don't, then follow me. These little guys are quite fun. Don't ruin my fun. Gahan said coldly. After that, Gahan didn't care and limped into the depths of the forest. Melauer was so angry that her nose was crooked, but just like Gahan said, she couldn't do anything to Gahan and could only follow behind Gahan into the depths of the forest. Speak. What do you want with a sword on my neck in the middle of the night? What do you want? Gahan asked coldly. I want your life. Melauer replied in the same cold tone. Don't say such useless nonsense in front of me. If you really want to kill me, you could have done it when your sword was on my neck. Why follow me all the way here? Gohan bluntly pierced through Melauer's thoughts. It's really boring to talk to people like you. Melauer sighed. All right, the Xin Yuan sword is in your hands. As long as you give me the Xin Yuan sword, I'll let you live. At the same time, I won't tell anyone that you are here. That's a good deal. It can save my life. Gohan smiled, and then raised the dimensional pocket in his hand. But the problem is that the Xin Yuan sword is now in my dimensional pocket. Without my sword essence, even if your Long-Shi Jinyi personally takes action, it would be impossible to open this dimensional pocket. But the problem is that my Zifu has been sealed by your Royal Highness the Crown Prince. Otherwise, why would I hang out with these little guys to eat and drink? Since I can't open the dimensional pocket, how can I give you the Xin Yuan sword? This. Melauer instantly froze. Obviously, she didn't expect to face such a problem. She only thought that now that Gohan's Zifu was sealed, his fighting strength had become that of an ordinary person. She could easily deal with him. But she didn't expect that when the other party became an ordinary person, the Xin Yuan sword would also be completely sealed. This time, Melauer was completely at a loss. How about after the seal on my Zifu is lifted, I will open the dimensional pocket and take out the Xin Yuan sword and give it to you? Gohan said very sincerely. Do you think I'm a fool? If the seal on your Z Palace is removed, then how could you give me the Xin Yuan sword? I'll thank the heavens if you don't come looking for trouble with me. Melauer hatefully said. It seemed that this child was not completely stupid. But in this way, Melauer really didn't know how to get the Xin Yuan sword from Gohan's dimensional pocket. As a result, the two of them stood in the cold night wind for about 10 minutes. Gohan was now just an ordinary person, so when the cold wind blew, he suddenly couldn't bear it. He waved his hand and said, You take your time to think. I'm going to sleep first. Come find me when you think about it. Stop right there. Who gave you permission to leave? Melauer once again stood in front of Gohan, but because of his hasty action, their bodies collided. Melauer's pair of opium pies directly hit Gohan's chest. Not knowing if it was because of the elasticity, the result was that the opium pies actually bounced Melauer back. Seeing Melauer's action, Gohan's eyes lit up and said, I have a good idea. Why don't you and I do it here? If you can get pregnant with my child, I will definitely not let my child down. In the future, when the seal of a Zifu is lifted, I will also give the Xin Yuan sword to my child. Since becoming a swordsman, Gohan's character has indeed changed a lot. If it was in the beginning, Gohan would never say such a lewd joke. But at this time, a problem arose. It was a joke in Gohan's mouth, but in Melauer's ears, it was not a joke. The woman suddenly smiled. This is an excellent idea. Why didn't I think of it? After Melauer finished speaking, he took out a Simmons from his dimensional pocket and placed it on the ground. Then, without hesitation, he took off his clothes and soon stood naked in front of Gohan. At this time of the polar night, Gohan could only see Melauer's body through the little bit of moonlight in the sky. It was such a little bit of moonlight, but it made Melauer's body particularly attractive and beautiful. Her snow-white skin reflected the faint moonlight, which was as cute as a mousse cake. Coupled with the bright red strawberry on top of the cake, it made people want to pounce on it and take a bite, then ravage it. Woman, you are too shameless, Gohan said absent-mindedly. Since fully understanding the joy of love, Gohan could no longer be as unmoved as when he was a child. Come on, my lord Gohan, in the face of such a beautiful woman, don't tell me you are not moved? Melauer said coquettishly. You can't be so stupid to think that you can get the Xin Yuan sword by sleeping with me. Gohan looked at Melauer playfully. Let's talk about the Xin Yuan sword later. You have successfully ignited the flame in my body. Lord Gohan, if you don't believe me, you can touch it. Then, Melauer grabbed Gohan's left hand and touched his lower body. Sure enough, it was wet, as if he had wet the bed. We blondes are not like Chinese women who are shy and shy. For us, sex is just an interesting pastime. We will do it when we are in the mood. As long as we are handsome and have a big guy, that's all. Melauer smiled foolishly, then grabbed Gohan's lower body with one hand, revealing a satisfied smile. This time, Gohan finally understood. The collision just now had knocked out the flame of desire in Melauer's body. He simply put the matter of the Xian Yuan sword aside and solved the problem of his own desire first. All right. In fact, it had been more than 10 days since Gahan had tasted the taste of a man and a woman. His lower body had already become as hard as iron. Regardless of Mellauer's position, he directly took off his clothes and rolled with Mellauer. After fighting for about an hour, Mellauer finally surrendered to Gahan. You really are a monster. Maybe I'll have to sleep in the medical cabin again. Mellauer was completely exhausted from the hour-long battle. What? Do you still want my Xian Yuan sword? Gahan squeezed Mellauer's bun. It was F*King big and bouncy, even better than when Mei Yun's. Sure enough, the innate advantage of the blonde race was too strong. Of course I want it. Mellauer smiled foolishly and grabbed Gahan's Xian Yuan sword. But I know that you are actually just playing with me. With my body, of course I can't get your Xian Yuan sword. So I prepared another gift for Lord Gahan. I hope Lord Gahan will kindly accept it. You have another gift? Gahan's brows instantly furrowed. He saw Mellauer clap his hands, and an artificial sword mistress with a dull expression grabbed a figure and walked to Gahan's side. Gahan was shocked when he saw this. The person who was captured was none other than Lu Yunue. At this time, Lu Yunue looked at the naked Gahan and Mellauer with a flushed face. She couldn't help but spit on Mellauer's body and scolded, "Adulterous couple. Little sister, you're wrong." Mellauer smiled tenderly. Your good master is not married, and I'm not married either. We're both free people. You can call us adulterous couple. How do you know he is my master? Lu Yunue asked in surprise. Your swordsmanship has improved so fast that anyone with a discerning eye can see it. I only need to ask others to know. Mellauer smiled again. Okay, less nonsense. Little sister, you have been peeking at us for an hour. Are you itching to see? Do you want to try it yourself? This is a top-notch Xian Yuan sword. It turned out that Lu Yunue had discovered Gahan when he left. As a result, she had been secretly following behind Gahan. As a result, she naturally watched the whole process as if it was an action movie. No, you shameless bitch, stay away from me. I am not as cheap as you to seduce my master. Lu Yunue struggled and said, Little girl, your mouth is very hard. I wonder how your mouth is like below. Mellauer suddenly said naughtily, How about this? If your mouth is dry, I will let you go. But if it is as salivating as my mouth below, then I will make your dream come true. How about it? You? Lu Yunue didn't manage to finish her curse. Her whole body let out a groan. Obviously, her vital part was already in someone's hands. After a dozen seconds, Mellauer raised his right hand high with a proud face. Under the moonlight, Mellauer's right hand shone with a sparkling light. It seems that our little girl can't wait to get ready. Mellauer sent Lu Yunue to Gahan and smiled. Dear, after eating my feast, how about a refreshing dessert? You're crazy. Gahan stood up and was ready to leave. But the moment he stood up, he suddenly felt dizzy and fainted in an instant. Hee, I guess you don't know that before I became a swordsman, I was a famous pharmacist in London. Mellauer said to Lu Yunue proudly. This Gahan is really treacherous. He didn't even kiss me the whole time. He was afraid that he would eat something dirty. But he didn't think that he didn't have to use his mouth to drug me. It's the same with that greedy Xian Yuan sword. Why are you telling me this? Lu Yunue, who was under Mellauer's control, instantly panicked. I want to say that dealing with a little girl like you doesn't need to be so troublesome. Mellauer directly pinched Lu Yunue's chin and forced her to open her mouth. Then, he directly threw a small blue pill in. As long as you eat it, you will definitely be more feminine than me just now. You understand men's hearts. Mellauer smiled knowingly and then stood up from the Simmons. He took out a black camera from his dimensional pocket. I didn't expect that I would also be a photographer. Chapter 1072. It's a pity that this is impossible. Just when Mellauer thought that his plan had succeeded, the originally unconscious Gahan suddenly opened his eyes and slapped Lu Yunue's chest. Before the blue pill could be digested, Gahan directly slapped it out and held it in his hand. Take it. Don't let anyone feed you this thing again. Gohan said seriously as he placed the blue pill in Lu Yunyue's hand. Impossible. Mel Lauer let out a scream of disbelief. You were clearly hit by my Viagra 3000. How could you wake up now? This medicine is much weaker than the effects of the Green Lotus 3 swords. If I, Gohan, don't want a woman, then no matter how tempting she is, it's meaningless to me. Gohan snorted, looked at the camera in Melauer's hand and smiled. But your plan is quite innovative. You want to take a video to threaten me. But you're wrong about one thing. If you use Lu Yunyue's life to threaten me, then maybe I will give in. But if you use this video to threaten me, then you're making a fool of yourself. Didn't you say just now? I, Gohan, don't have a wife, and Lu Yunyue isn't married either. What's the big deal if I marry Lu Yunyue? Do you want to threaten me with this little video? Gohan said disdainfully, but in Lu Yunyue's ears, it had a different meaning. Lord Lung Qingxiu said he wants to marry me. Thinking of this, Lu Yunyue couldn't help but jump up and down. Oof. Men all talk pretty, but when it comes to real action, they're all cowards. Mel Lauer spat, turned around, and directly left, no longer pressing Gohan about the Xianyuan sword. She couldn't kill Gohan, and she couldn't take the Xianyuan sword from Gohan's hand, so she could only leave. Master, are you really Lord Gohan? Are you really not called Lung Qingxiu? As soon as Mel Lauer left, Lu Yunyue hurriedly asked, Yes, I am Gohan. Gohan nodded. So what Su Junjie and the others said yesterday was true? Were those things really done by you, Master? Lu Yunyue hurriedly asked again. You can say that I did it. Although the feud between him and the Sword Spirit of the Sea Hall was very complicated, Su Junjie was right in terms of facts. Whatever. Disciple believes that Master is definitely innocent. Even if Master really did it, Master must have his own difficulties. What Master did is definitely right. Disciple will always support Master. Lu Yunyue said loudly. Things of the fairies. Gohan smiled and returned to the team with Lu Yunyue. The night passed uneventfully. When the sun rose high in the sky the next morning, the team began to climb the tall mountain according to the location of the treasure they had determined last night. Mel Lauer did not choose to expose Gohan's identity. He behaved the same as before, as if he did not recognize that Lung Qingxiu was Gohan from beginning to end. The others, on the other hand, had completely forgotten about yesterday's topic. Their minds were completely focused on the treasure. No one knew how many years it had been since anyone climbed this mountain, or how many years had it been since anyone or Yuanko climbed it. All the mountain paths were blocked by lush bushes, and most of the paths were steep cliffs. Every step the team took required a great deal of effort. Strong people like Shang Yi and Chu Hanming could not help but gasp for breath after climbing about a third of the way up. They looked as if they had exhausted all their strength. Mel Lauer, on the other hand, did not show any signs of fatigue. However, she was a famed swordswoman. Her physique was different from the other swordswoman. However, what the others did not understand was that Lung Qingxiu was clearly an ordinary person. Moreover, her left leg was seriously injured and had not fully recovered. However, Lung Qingxiu appeared to be calmer than everyone else. She did not even have the slightest bit of shortness of breath. It was as if climbing these mountain paths was not difficult at all. Only Lu Yunyue, who was beside Gohan, knew that when they were climbing the mountain, Gohan had been constantly giving Lu Yunyue pointers on how to use strength through secret sound transmission. This allowed Lu Yunyue to use the mountain's own terrain to climb up. The consumption of strength was only 2 or 3 times that of normal walking. Therefore, Lu Yunyue was still full of energy after climbing up the mountain path. Lu Yunyue, who was only given a few pointers by Gohan, was able to do this. Then one could imagine Gohan's ability to borrow strength. The mountain path was no different from flat ground in front of Gohan. Therefore, Gohan did not expend much energy at all. At this rate, we'll have to stay halfway up the mountain for another night. Chu Hanming said with some worry. It was not that they did not want to waste the night, but the mountain was very steep and there were very few places to set up camp. If they slept in a place like this, it would not be impossible for them to roll down the mountain in the middle of the night. We can't stay here for another night. Ever since we started climbing this mountain, I have a bad feeling in my heart. It's like there is something terrifying hidden in this mountain. We must find the treasure today and then use the paraglider to descend the mountain tonight. We can't stay here for a moment longer, Shang Yi said with a head full of sweat. However, this sweat was not the warm sweat that came from exercising, but the cold sweat that came from fright. Shang Yi's words made everyone instantly silent. This was because they all felt the same as Shang Yi. There seemed to be something ominous in this mountain. However, no one was willing to directly expose this matter. If they were the only one who felt this way, wouldn't it be embarrassing? Master, I suddenly have an ominous premonition. Is there really any danger in here? Lu Yingyue asked Guhan nervously as well. Of course there is danger. No matter which story it is, the treasure represents wealth, but it also represents great danger. Who knows, there might be a level Yuan Ko waiting for us. Guhan said with a smile. What? Lu Yingyue was shocked. This is the treasure left behind by our Lu family's ancestor. How could there be danger in there? Then wouldn't the ancestor want to kill us descendants? It's impossible for him to kill you descendants, but it's natural for him to kill us outsiders. Gohan smiled. Okay, you don't have to worry. When the car reaches the mountain, there will be a way out. We are already halfway up the mountain. Of course, we can't go down. Let's continue forward. After a short rest, Shang Yi suddenly walked in front of Gohan. He first respectfully bowed to Gohan. Then, with a pleading tone, he said, Lord Lung Qingqiu, please think of the big picture and tell us the method to go up the mountain. We really can't stay halfway up the mountain for a night. What method to go up the mountain? What do you mean by that? I don't understand. Gohan turned his head. Lord, you don't have to pretend anymore. All of us can see that the reason why Yunyue's strength has increased so much along the way is all because of your secret guidance. And just now when we were climbing up the mountain, only you and Yunyu didn't expend too much energy. We really aren't fools. Otherwise, Lord Lung Qingqiu wouldn't have followed us smoothly all the way down. Don't tell me you really want us to speak openly? Shang Ye's words were very interesting and worth carefully pondering. You're very good. Gohan nodded. When we return to Yuzhong City, you will be my subordinate. I will give you a big way out. Gohan patted Shang Ye's shoulder and said, Thank you, Lord. Shang Ye's face revealed an excited expression as he cupped his fist toward Gohan. Okay, everyone follow me. Watch every step I take. If any one of you falls down the mountain because of a mistake, I won't be responsible. Gohan shouted loudly. He nimbly jumped on a rock with one leg, and his whole body rose half a meter. Then his injured leg just happened to touch another protruding rock, and he instantly rose up. The whole process was easy and smooth, as if he was walking on flat ground. Master, wait for me. Lu Yingyue quickly followed behind Gohan and walked in the same position as Gohan. Everyone follow one by one. Watch the steps of the person in front. Absolutely do not make a mistake. Shang Yi shouted loudly and followed the former steps. He didn't dare to take a wrong step. Although the others muttered some unpleasant words, everyone, including Meller and Li Xiangtian, followed Shang Ye's instructions and climbed up the same rock one by one. And so, something miraculous happened. Even though the path ahead was even steeper than the cliff they had climbed before, they didn't feel any strain as they followed the path Guhan had taken. Instead, there was a faint elastic force beneath their feet that bounced them up, and the energy they expended was more than 10 times less than before. When everyone finally arrived at the location they saw last night, they were surprised to find that it had only been 40 minutes since they rested, but the distance they had traveled was more than 3 times the distance they had traveled in the previous 4 hours. Although they felt that they had exhausted a lot of their stamina, they still had most of their stamina left, unlike when they rested earlier, when they were completely exhausted. Strange. Why can't I find the entrance? The place they stopped at was a small platform on the cliff. It was about 100 square meters. It was a very small platform. It was reasonable to say that if there was an entrance to a cave around this platform, it would be impossible to escape everyone's eyes. However, after everyone cleared all the vines around the platform, they found that there wasn't even a mouse hole on the cliff. It was impossible for there to be an entrance for people to enter or exit. Are we in the wrong place? Li Xiangtian anxiously scratched his head. Impossible. I've checked it again and again. This is the right place. Shang Yi said with certainty. Look at this. Zhuangyu suddenly found something. Everyone quickly gathered around him and found that Zhuangyu had embedded a crystal-clear diamond somewhere on the cliff. This diamond seemed to have been cut by a divine knife. It had more than 100 different parallel surfaces. It was as beautiful as a celestial object. Whether it was Lu Yinyue or Meller, the moment they saw this diamond, their eyes couldn't help but shine. They couldn't wait to hang this diamond around their necks. I get it. This is the source of light we saw last night. It was this diamond that reflected the moonlight. Shang Yi suddenly realized. Yes, the entrance is here. There must be some hidden mechanism here. Let's look carefully. With the appearance of this diamond, everyone immediately went all out to search. However, after a full 2 hours had passed and the sun was gradually setting, they still didn't find anything. Chapter 1073. Lu Yunyue. Do you know who is the stupidest person in this world? Looking at these sword-wielders aimlessly searching the surrounding rock walls, Guhan said in a very mocking tone. Lu Yunyue didn't say anything. How could she continue such a topic? How could she still be human? Lord Lung Qingxiu, did you discover something? Hearing Guhan say this, not only was Shang Yi not angry, but his face was full of surprise. Because since Guhan said this, it was obvious that he had found the problem. I didn't discover anything, but I only know that many people only care about the things in front of them and don't know how to look under their feet. Only when their feet are on the ground can they move forward firmly. Guhan said very meaningfully. Thank you, Lord Lung Qingxiu. Shang Yi wasn't stupid. After hearing Guhan's words, he immediately let everyone search the surrounding rocks and began to search the platform under his feet. Sure enough, there was an extremely important discovery. Zhuazong Ryu used the sword in his hand to continuously stab the inside of the platform. In the end, at a corner, he found that there was a hollow under his feet. There was a hollow hole with a diameter of more than half a meter. Everyone quickly dug up the ground at that location and found a deep entrance. Li Xiangtian was about to jump in impatiently, but he was stopped by Shang Yi. What's the hurry? The space inside has been sealed for hundreds of years. Who knows if there are any dangerous things inside? Let me put a robot in first. After saying that, Shang Yi took out a small hovering robot from his dimensional pocket. This hovering robot could hover in the air without making a sound. At the same time, it could clearly see everything inside without any light shining on it. At the same time, it could also detect the composition of the air in the space. It was a necessary advance for exploring various ruins. Many dangerous ruins were discovered because of the existence of this robot, and a large number of lives were saved. Under Shang Ye's control, this hovering robot gradually went deeper into the hole. Soon, the scene inside the hole was transmitted to Shang Ye's personal terminal and was projected by Shang Yi. The tunnel was very long, and there was a sharp turn every 10 meters. The hovercraft flew for about 3,000 meters before finally passing through the long tunnel and arriving at a large space. The space was completely dark, but the special camera could still clearly show the situation inside the cave. Unexpectedly, this long cave was actually connected to an incomparably large space. The robot scanning system did a simple scan and found that this cave was actually connected to a huge space that was about 5,000 meters long, 1,000 meters wide, and 800 meters high. Such a space had almost hollowed out half of the hill. However, Guhan had seen such a space once before. It was in the training array in Changyang Mountain. Even now, as long as Guhan gently rubbed the ring on his finger, he could still instantly return to the training array. P.S. How shameful, the author actually forgot about this trap. I only remembered it when a reader reminded me. How shameful. The space inside this cave was similar to the training space of Changyang Mountain. However, the training space of Changyang Mountain was much larger than this one. It was about 10 times the size of this cave. Wow, this space is so big. There must be countless treasures inside. Li Xiangtian couldn't help but exclaim in excitement when he saw the image captured by the hovercraft. These treasures must be huge for such a huge space to be able to contain them. I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. There's actually nothing inside, Shan Yi said with a solemn expression. Under the rapid scanning of the hovering robots, the entire three-dimensional image gradually appeared in front of everyone. Everyone was surprised to find that this huge space was actually empty. There was nothing inside. This is impossible, Li Xiangtian exclaimed. This space was clearly dug out by someone. Why is there nothing inside? Could it be that someone took it away in advance? Mel Lauer looked at Lu Yunyue and asked, could it be that your ancestors took away all the treasures inside in advance? What you brought us here is just a treasure that has been emptied. Hearing Mel Lauer's words, everyone immediately felt that it made sense. Then, they all looked at Lu Yunyue. If Lu Yunyue's ancestors had really emptied this place, then they would definitely not let Lu Yunyue go. 4 of their companions had died. How much hardship did they have to go through to finally reach this place? In the end, what they got was an empty shell. At this moment, these people almost wanted to eat Lu Yunyue alive. Look at what that is. Just when everyone's eyes were about to devour Lu Yunyue, Su Jun suddenly pointed to the center of the 3D map and said. They quickly cast their gazes over and found that there was actually a small raised platform in the center. However, this small platform was too small compared to the huge space. If they didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to discover the existence of this small platform. Shang Yi controlled the hovercraft to fly to the small platform. The small platform was about 1 meter high. There was only a light red silk pouch on the small platform. It looked no different from an ordinary brocade pouch. What? It's just a cloth bag, Li Xiangtian said in disappointment. What do you know? Chu Hanming snorted disdainfully. Do you think that the ancient people were like us now? That they used advanced technology to create dimensional pockets? At that time, the ancient people's technology wasn't advanced. They couldn't use these precious materials to a high degree like us. Therefore, they could only use these dimensional materials in the simplest way. The dimensional pocket they created was just a small brocade pouch. It's really scary to be uneducated. You? Li Xiangtian's face turned red from Chu Hanming's words. However, after a long time, he couldn't even say a word in rebuttal. It was really scary to be uneducated. Don't talk back to others. Looking at the brocade pouch on the small platform, Gahan couldn't help but think of the few dimensional brocade pouches that I Ching had given him. They were also antiques from 800 years ago. The dimensional pockets of that era indeed looked like brocade pouches. I understand now. Su Junja patted his head hard and suddenly said, who said that the treasure must be piled on the ground? Since there is a dimensional pocket, then put it in it. All the treasure must be in this dimensional pocket. This discovery immediately raised everyone's spirits. For safety's sake, Shan Yi ordered the hovering robot to scan the entire space several times. After confirming that there was indeed no danger and the air was only a little lacking in oxygen, they could move freely with an oxygen tank. Finally, everyone entered the cave. Unexpectedly, this long cave was not easy to walk. The direction of the cave was continuously upward, but the soil on both sides of the cave seemed to be compressed and became very smooth. If one was not careful, one would slip and slide down. However, in front of the treasure, these difficulties were naturally nothing. After about half an hour, everyone finally passed through the long cave and arrived at the huge space that the hover robot had seen. There was nothing much to say. Everyone, including Gahan, immediately rushed to the small platform in the middle. At this time, the advantage of speed showed itself. As a famed sword-level swordsman, Mel Lauer was the fastest. He rushed to the small platform ahead of everyone else. Not good. That Mel Lauer won't take the dimensional brocade bag for himself, right? Li Xiangtian exclaimed. Everyone's hearts sank when they heard this. One by one, they desperately ran to the center and finally arrived at the side of the small platform while panting. Mel Lauer, who arrived first, didn't take the dimensional brocade bag, as Li Xiangtian had guessed. Of course, this wasn't because Mel Lauer was a noble person and kept his promise. Instead, it was because there was an invisible barrier protecting the outside of the brocade bag. Mellauer used his sword mistress to hack at the barrier a few times, but couldn't break it. He could only stop there and wait for the others to arrive. Everyone quickly discovered the existence of the energy shield. Everyone tried to force their way through the energy shield, but they all returned in failure. Everyone, don't waste your energy. Yunyue's ancestor was at least an immortal sword-level swordsman. The method he set up is not something that we insignificant ancient sword-level, treasure sword-level, or famed sword-level swordsmen can break. Everyone should think of another way to open the barrier. Shang Yi stopped everyone from attacking the barrier. If this barrier was really set up by an immortal sword-level swordsman, then besides Gahan, whose mind palace wasn't sealed, no one else had the ability to open it. I remember now. There was this sentence on the map left behind by the ancestor. Lu Yunyue took out the treasure map from her dimensional pocket and pointed at the words written in the corner. It says only my bloodline can open the treasure trove. Does it mean that my blood can only be used to open the treasure trove? That makes sense. That must be it. Mellauer clapped his hands and didn't wait for Lu Yunyue to say anything. He took out his sword mistress and cut Lu Yunyue's finger. Lu Yunyue was scared silly. Although she was willing to contribute her blood, she didn't want to be forced to launch a surprise attack. If Mellauer had malicious intentions, wouldn't he have killed her in one strike? Unfortunately, the others didn't have any objections to Mellauer's actions. Instead, they kept urging Lu Yunyue to drip her blood on the barrier. Lu Yunyue had no choice but to put on an act. The moment Lu Yunyue's blood came into contact with the barrier, the entire barrier disappeared. While everyone was cheering for this, the dimensional brocade pouch that had been quietly lying on the ground floated up by itself. The mouth of the brocade pouch instantly opened to the size of a bathtub. Before everyone could react, it swallowed Lu Yunyue in one gulp and returned to its small form, returning to the small platform. Chapter 1074. Not good. Yunyue has been eaten by this dimensional sachet. Let's quickly destroy this sachet and save Yunyue. Seeing Lu Yunyue being swallowed by the dimensional sachet, Chu Hanming immediately said anxiously. He was even prepared to forcefully destroy the dimensional sachet. Don't waste your energy. Only spirit sword tier and above sword bearers can destroy this dimensional brocade pouch with their own strength. We aren't even famed sword tier sword bearers, so we can't do anything to this dimensional brocade pouch. You should save yourself some trouble, Yu said with an extremely stiff expression. In fact, it wasn't just Yu. Everyone else had the same expression as Yu. They looked stiff, as if someone had died in their family. What's wrong with you guys? A teammate was eaten by a sachet. Not only are you guys indifferent, but you also have such ugly expressions. It's as if you can't wait for Lu Yunyue to die. Are you guys still human? Chu Hanming said loudly with dissatisfaction. Can't you tell, you idiot? We've all been tricked by Lu Yunyue. Hearing Chu Hanming's voice, Li Xiangtian was infuriated. He said with a face full of resentment, Lu Yunyue didn't encounter any danger at all. This is a dimensional sachet left behind by their ancestor. If he wants to harm someone, he would harm us outsiders. How could he harm his descendant? What do you mean? Why don't I understand? Chu Hanming still had a blank look on his face. You really are an idiot. Li Xiangtian was helpless. He could only explain in detail. This dimensional sachet swallowed Lu Yunyue not to harm her. On the contrary, it's to protect her. Lu Yunyue's ancestor must have left some mechanism. As long as his descendant comes, she will be protected through the dimensional sachet. That's not right. The dimensional space in the dimensional sachet is not something a living person can survive in. Lu Yunyue will only die if she enters the dimensional sachet. Okay? Chu Hanming retorted. What if this dimensional sachet hides a solidified void gate? Li Xiangtian said, as if he had seen a stupid pig. Hearing Li Xiangtian's words, Chu Hanming reacted. You're saying that this dimensional sachet hides a solidified void gate? Lu Yunyue was transferred to another place by this solidified void gate? That's right. That was it. The moment the pouch was opened, I felt the power of the void. This is definitely the opening of a void gate. Mellauer added. The so-called solidified void door was a void door that an immortal sword wielder could use special methods to solidify and hide in a dimensional pocket or dimensional pouch. In any case, it was fine as long as it was in a dimensional equipment. This was because only dimensional equipment could ensure that the power of the void door would not dissipate and could continue to exist. When the sword-bearer encountered danger, the sword-bearer could use this solidified void gate to immediately teleport to a predetermined location, thereby avoiding fatal danger. It was a rather powerful, life-saving method. It was similar to the green ring on Gahan's hand, which could allow him to return to the trial array at any time. However, the solidified void door was a one-time use item. Once the dimensional pouch was opened, the void door would immediately open as well. In less than 10 seconds, the void door would close and disappear forever. Therefore, a specialized dimensional pouch had to be used to store the solidified void door. More importantly, solidifying a void door required a huge price. Firstly, the immortal sword wielder would permanently lose 1 million quarks of sword essence. Secondly, a large amount of precious materials and a regional king's dimensional crystal would be consumed. With these conditions combined, most immortal sword wielder would not solidify a void door in their lifetime. Emperor sword wielder would usually only leave 1 or 2 solidified void doors for their descendants. There must be some kind of mechanism on this dimensional brocade pouch. When a member of Lu Yinyue's family opens the protective air barrier, the mechanism on the dimensional brocade pouch will immediately be triggered. Then, it will take away its descendant through the solidified void gate and teleport them to another space. Shang Yi said with a livid expression. That's why we've all been played by that girl. Mellauer's nose and eyebrows were twisted together in anger. That girl must have known this a long time ago. That's why she was willing to hand over the treasure map and recruit idiots like us to escort her here. Once she's here, she only needs to trigger the mechanism in the pouch, and she'll be transported to another space. Her ancestors' treasures must be hidden in that space. She's probably counting the treasures left behind by her ancestors right now. As for us idiots who have been used by her, we can only die from anger. Did everyone understand what was going on? What Mellauer meant was that the whole invitation to share the treasure was a scam. Lu Yinyue wanted to use the sword-bearers to escort her safely to the location of the treasure. Then, she would use the mechanism designed by her ancestor to teleport herself to the true location of the treasure. She would enjoy all the treasure by herself, and the sword-bearers were just idiots who worked for her. How could this be? Chu Hanming sat down in disbelief. He couldn't believe that he had been used by the seemingly innocent Lu Yinyue. He muttered to himself in disbelief. Then what about her family? Isn't she afraid that we'll take revenge on her family? I remember that Lu Yinyue's immediate family is already dead. Su Junjie continued. Then it makes sense. Since her biological parents are already dead, Lu Yinyue doesn't care about those relatives at all. I believe that these relatives have bullied this child who has lost her parents. So, if we really went to find trouble with her family, I'm afraid that not only will Lu Yinyue not feel sad, she'll even clap her hands in joy. That's right. As for herself, with so many resources and treasures left behind by her ancestors, would she be afraid that she won't be able to cultivate to the treasured sword or famed sword rank? At the very least, she can spend some money to hire a powerful sword-bearer to protect her. When that time comes, we useless ancient and treasured sword-bearers won't be able to do anything to her. This is why she only invited ancient and treasured sword-bearers. Because we're the weakest, she won't have to worry about revenge in the future. It's a perfect plan, Li Xiangtian added as he followed behind Su Junjie. In just a few words, Lu Yinyue's image had changed from that of a pure, kind, and adorable little girl to that of a sinister, vicious, and greedy woman. Lord Lung Qingxiu, why haven't you said anything? And your expression hasn't changed in the slightest. Could it be that you already knew about Lu Yinyue's hidden plot? Mellauer suddenly turned his head and said to Gahan behind him. Because Gahan and Lu Yinyue's relationship was the closest, Everyone could see that they had already become a pair of master and disciple. Therefore, Melauer's words were extremely tempting and persuasive. Everyone couldn't help but believe that Gahan had already known about Lu Yunyue's plan. The reason my expression hasn't changed is because I believe in Lu Yunyue's character. She's definitely not a sinister and cunning person. Everything you've said is just speculation. There's no concrete evidence to prove that Lu Yunyue knew about the trap on the dimensional pouch. I believe that she also doesn't know about the trap on the dimensional pouch. Gahan slowly said, "Of course. You're her master. Of course you'll believe her. You're in cahoots." Melauer placed his sword on Gahan's neck for the third time. "Then I'll use your life to threaten Lu Yunyue. Let's see if your good disciple respects you as her master, and if she's willing to jump out for you." Sigh. Gahan pushed the sword away for the third time. "That's why I said that you're too fixated on what's in front of you. Didn't I say that I'll show you what's beneath your feet?" Hearing Gahan's words, everyone subconsciously looked down. They were stunned to find that there were several rows of small words engraved on the ground near the small platform. However, everyone's attention was on the dimensional pouch, so no one noticed the row of words beneath their feet. "This is the seal of the thunder and lightning dragon, Pale Kamui, divine might goddess Nikon Kamui. Only those of my captivating red bloodline can receive the protection of the void. Everyone else, please leave quickly and do not touch the dimensional pouch. Otherwise, the terrifying thunder and lightning dragon will break the seal and awaken." Li Xiangtian read the words aloud, and his face turned pale with fright. Lightning dragon, Pale Kamui, mighty Kamui, Connor Kamui. Although he had never heard of these three names before, each one sounded more terrifying than the other. Even a fool could tell that in addition to the treasures of Lu Yunyue's ancestor, there was also an extremely terrifying Yuanko sealed here. Lightning dragon? Connor? Gahan recalled these names, but realized that they didn't exist in any of the information. It seemed like this was a Yuan Ko that had never appeared in the human world. "You should leave this place," Guhan said. "This isn't a place you should stay. You still have a chance of survival if you leave now. If you insist on staying here, only death awaits you." "Oh, I won't leave." Li Xiangtian, who had wanted to say that he would leave now, looked at the dimensional pouch on the small platform and couldn't help but say it. It hadn't been easy for them to come to this treasure trove. But not only did they not obtain anything, they even had to flee like stray dogs. This was something a greedy person like Li Xiangtian couldn't accept no matter what. In fact, it wasn't just Li Xiangtian. The rest of the team couldn't accept this fact either. Although they couldn't help but wait here, they felt that Lu Yunyue might appear again after obtaining the treasure. They wouldn't be satisfied if they didn't wait for at least half a month. Moreover, who knew if the words written on the ground were real or fake? Perhaps they were just lies used to deceive people. Therefore, after a few minutes, no one had any intention of leaving this space. "If you can stay, I'll leave." Gahan sighed and walked towards the cave entrance. He left this dangerous sealed area without looking back. These people had been blinded by greed. Since that was the case, he wouldn't accompany these idiots in death. Chapter 1075. Pavilion Master. "Wait for me." Gahan turned his head and saw the team leader, Shang Yi, running behind him, gasping for breath as he called out Gahan's previous identity. However, when Gahan's figure completely disappeared into the mountain, Shang Yi's mind was filled with all kinds of fear. He thought of the scene when Gahan led them into battle in Yuzhong City. He thought of Gahan's flawless plans. He thought of Guhan's eloquent demeanor during the trial conference. He also thought of how Guhan defeated Liu Ling and helped Yuzhong City become the champion of the 8 Academies Conference for the first time in decades. This giant dragon had the appearance of a standard Western giant dragon. It looked like a giant lizard with a pair of lightning-like wings on its back. It had a pair of thick thighs and a pair of dragon claws that looked very slender compared to its thighs. "Sir, you are so righteous. I admire you." Shang Yu was even more impressed. "You were an ancient sword-rank swordsman back then, right?" Gahan thought for a moment and said, "Among those swordsmen, there were only 3 treasure sword-rank swordsmen. I remember them very clearly. One was called Shi Shui, one was called Luo Tian, and the last one was called Yu Feiying. As for the other ancient sword-rank swordsmen, I don't remember them very clearly. Oh, right. Since you recognized me, why didn't you expose my identity? Gahan asked curiously. Yes, Brother Gahan. Shang Yi quickly corrected himself. So you were the swordsman who was trapped in the communications building back then. Hearing Shang Ye's words, Guhan suddenly remembered. When he had led the 1,000 swordsmen guarding the city wall into the core area, the first batch of swordsmen to be rescued were the swordsmen and staff trapped in the communications building near the garbage treatment plant. Gohan still remembered rescuing more than 20 swordsmen from the communications building. Now that he thought about it carefully, he did vaguely see Shang Ye's shadow. You recognized me? Gohan was a little surprised. He did not expect someone in the team to recognize his true identity. Furthermore, the other party did not address him by his real name, Gahan. Instead, he addressed him as Pavilion Master. The meaning behind this was not simple. Replying to Lord Pavilion Master's question, I actually recognized Lord Pavilion Master's identity at first glance. Actually, Lord Pavilion Master doesn't know this, but I'm a loyal fan of Lord Pavilion Master. Back when I was trapped in the communication building in the core area, it was Lord Pavilion Master who led the troops to rescue me. Otherwise, I would have died at the hands of Yuan Ko in less than 20 minutes. Lord Pavilion Master is my savior, and I've always remembered Lord Pavilion Master's face, even if Lord Pavilion Master was in a sorry state. Shang Yi said with admiration, Cover your ears. Hearing a dragon's roar at such a close distance is very likely to rupture your eardrums. Seeing this scene, Gahan immediately warned Shang Yi who was beside him. With the previous experience, Shang Yi had already regarded Gahan's words as the golden rule. Therefore, he immediately plugged his ears with his fingers without hesitation. When the two of them were fully prepared to welcome the dragon's roar, oh no! A clear and melodious child's voice rang out from the mouth of the enormous white dragon. What the hell is this? Both Shang Yi and Guhan were so frightened by these words that they loosened their fingers from plugging their ears. Not good. That lightning dragon is coming out. Guhan immediately reacted. This was a sign that the lightning dragon was about to be born. The seal within the mountain range could no longer seal this lightning dragon called Kana. It was likely that it would break out of the seal soon. This is the lightning dragon, Kana, Kami. Shang Yi muttered to himself with a face full of fear. He didn't doubt that if this enormous dragon stomped down, it could easily turn him into a pile of minced meat. My lord, you've actually remembered the names of these three until now. Shang Ye's face was full of amazement. He obviously didn't dare to believe that Gahan could remember the names of these three sword-bearers he'd only met by chance. My lord's wisdom in the Battle of Yuzhong City has already deeply convinced me. I believe in Lord Owner's judgment. Since Lord Owner said that the lightning dragon will revive, then it will definitely revive. I'm not willing to wait for death in the belly of the mountain. Before I left, I also tried to persuade the others, but unfortunately, they weren't willing to listen to me, so I could only come out myself. Shang Yi explained. Following the split of the mountain, a huge dragon leapt out from the belly of the mountain. This was a pure white dragon. Its exact size was hard to describe, but it was about the same size as the ruins of the Bird's Nest Stadium in Yinjing City. Shang Yi clenched his teeth, stamped his feet, and followed behind Gahan to escape. He didn't think that he would actually be able to escape with his life. Shang Yi couldn't help but stand behind Gahan, and even slightly bend his knees, not daring to exceed Gahan in height. Shang Yi was a 185 meters tall man, half a head taller than Gahan, but now he looked half a head shorter than Gahan. When Gahan left the belly of the mountain and ran all the way to the foot of the mountain, Gahan thought that no one would be willing to give up the treasure that was so close at hand and escape from the belly of the mountain. However, he didn't think that there would be someone following closely behind him, following him all the way down. From beginning to end, Gahan couldn't defeat the powerful U-class Yuan Ko, and he only managed to survive until the reinforcements from Yinjing City arrived. In the end, he was forcibly sealed and wasn't allowed to enter the game for 3 days. Of course, because of this, Gahan accompanied Song Hama to test the sword element, and that was also why he had the fated encounter with Liu Yinling. Then, he met his own nemesis, the Qingpin sword. They are all sword bearers who sacrifice their strength and lives to protect Yuzhong City, so I have no reason not to remember them. If it wasn't for my poor memory, I would even be willing to remember the names of all the ancient sword bearers. Gahan said calmly, "All right, don't call me this one, and don't call me sir. It makes me feel uncomfortable." Gahan curled his lips. "You're a few years older than me, and we're brothers who went through life and death together in Yuzhong City. Let's just call each other brothers. I'll call you Brother Shangyi, and you can call me Brother Gahan. There's no need to be so awkward. I wonder how this Thunder Dragon compares to Zayanada." Seeing this Thunder Dragon, Gahan couldn't help but think of the U-Class Yuan Ko, the Dark Dragon King Zayanada, that he had fought in the Wudong Peak dungeon. Shangyi looked at the scene in front of him, sweating profusely. At the same time, he was glad that he had run out. Actually, when Gahan left, Shangyi was also very hesitant. He had paid a higher price than the other sword bearers, and he wanted the precious treasure even more. Therefore, Shangyi had originally decided to ignore Gahan's decision. He was still waiting in the belly of the mountain, waiting for the opportunity that he didn't know would come. It was worth mentioning that this pure white dragon's legs were shorter and thicker than the legs of the other Western dragons that Gahan had seen. It seemed to be more powerful. However, this dragon's face was very different from the fierce crocodile face of the other Western dragons. This thunder dragon's face was round, and it looked more like a big pancake. As for the others, they landed in the lush forest. Gahan couldn't see the final outcome. In any case, if they didn't die, they would be crippled. This earthquake lasted for a few minutes. Soon, Gahan saw the other sword bearers fleeing from the belly of the mountain in a panic. As soon as they got out of the cave, they landed on the platform. The vibration of the mountain reached its peak. Then, amidst the screams of the sword bearers, the whole mountain split from the middle. It was as if someone had used a giant axe to split it, probably because it had been sealed for too long. When this thunder dragon woke up from its slumber, it couldn't help but open its bloody mouth. It seemed like it was ready to announce its resurrection with a loud dragon roar. "So that's how it is." Gahan nodded and asked with a smile, "The others are waiting in the belly of the mountain for Liu Yunue to come out. Why did you come out with me? Aren't you afraid of missing the treasure that you have been searching for?" "Oh no, oh no." This thunder dragon continued to repeat it in a flat, lowly voice. It seemed that Gahan didn't hear wrongly. This was indeed a big deal. Actually, Su Junja wasn't the only one who saw the wanted order from the Sword Committee before his personal terminal was damaged. I actually saw it too. Shangyi smiled bitterly. "At first, I was worried about how to help you cover up your identity. But since you gave yourself a fake name, I'll go with the flow and pretend that I don't know you. It's just that you have been staying with Miss Yinue, so I didn't have the chance to reveal my identity until now." As the two of them were talking, the ground suddenly began to shake violently. That was especially true for the mountain that contained the buried treasure. It was as though the mountain was collapsing and the earth was cracking. Countless rocks rolled down, and it seemed as though the mountain was on the verge of collapsing. As a result, the rest of the sword bearers fell from the mountainside, along with the endless falling rocks. Through his frosty eyesight, he could clearly see that the quiet Yu Yu and the even quieter Qin Liang had been smashed by a huge boulder. They were instantly turned into a pile of minced meat. They could not be any more dead than they were. Chapter 1076. "Oh no, I'm so hungry." The Thunder Dragon Kong calmly narrated this fact, and then her body swept across the ground, and Gahan saw that her claws were grabbing onto a struggling figure. "It's Li Xiangtian. He was caught by this dragon. This dragon won't eat him, right?" Shangyi immediately exclaimed after he saw that the person caught by the dragon's claws was Li Xiangtian. "Maybe." Gahan shrugged. Although Western dragons are similar in size, they have different tastes. Some dragons like to eat humans, And some dragons think that humans are the most unpalatable things in the world, so I don't know if this thunder dragon will eat Li Xiangtian. This pure white thunder dragon didn't eat Li Xiangtian immediately after catching him. But like pinching a grasshopper, she put him in front of her eyes and just quietly looked at Li Xiangtian. Although Gahan didn't know what this thunder dragon was thinking, she seemed to be guessing whether Li Xiangtian tasted good or not. As for Li Xiangtian, who had been treated as food, he was so scared that he was completely dumbfounded. He waved his hands and legs, but because they were too far away, Guhan and Shangyi couldn't hear what Li Xiangtian was saying. He didn't know if this thunder dragon had a phobia of choice, but after struggling for 5 to 6 minutes, she still couldn't decide whether to eat Li Xiangtian or not. Therefore, this thunder dragon slowly flapped her wings in the air, landed on the ground, and grabbed Li Xiangtian's dragon claws and asked with some annoyance, "Is this thing delicious?" "Lord Gahan, is it asking us?" Shangyi couldn't help but ask Gahan while trembling all over. "Aren't you talking nonsense? She has already sent him in front of us, so of course she is asking us." Guhan smiled helplessly because this thunder dragon had extended Li Xiangtian in front of him and Shangyi. Li Xiangtian and Gahan were less than a meter away, and Guhan only needed to stretch out his hand to touch Li Xiangtian's head. "Save me! Save me!" Seeing Guhan and Shangyi, Li Xiangtian immediately looked like he saw a life-saving straw and frantically shouted, "Save me! Hurry, save me!" Shangyi instinctively pulled out his sword Maiden. At this moment, Li Xiangtian was less than a meter away from him, and Shangyi felt that if his sword Maiden was a little faster, he might be able to attack this thunder dragon's dragon claws when she wasn't paying attention, and see if he could force the thunder dragon to let go. "Don't act rashly." Guhan pressed down on Shangyi's hand, and this action was seen by Li Xiangtian. This guy immediately became angry and angrily scolded, "Lung Qingxiu, you bastard, you are not loyal. You abandoned us in the mountain and ran away by yourself. We painstakingly saved you from Yuan Ko's hands in vain. Now the captain is planning to save me, and you are crazy enough to stop him. You heartless bastard, even if I become a ghost, I will not let you off. If you really become a ghost, I will kill you just like how I killed Yuan Ko. In any case, ghosts are just a kind of Yuan Ko." Gohan coldly said, "As for why I stopped Shangyi from saving you, it is because I don't want Shangyi to become someone else's meal like you. Shangyi, you don't think that with your strength, you can really save him, right?" Gohan turned to look at Shangyi and said, "If you must save him, I will not stop you." "You are right, I am muddle-headed." Shangyi had already calmed down. How could he still have the guts to save someone from the hands of this lightning dragon? "Captain, boss, don't listen to this guy's nonsense. This dragon is very weak. You can definitely save me easily." This Li Xiangtian, in order to survive, no longer cared about other people's lives. He could even say this kind of brainless words. "You guys are so noisy. Quickly tell Kong Na, is this thing delicious? Don't lie to Kong Na." Lightning Dragon Kong Na waited for a long time, but did not hear Gahan's answer, so she said somewhat impatiently, "Lord, how should I answer?" Shangyi moved closer to Gahan and asked in a low voice. He really did not know how to answer Kong Na's question. If he answered that it was delicious, then Li Xiangtian would most likely be eaten by this lightning dragon. But if he answered that it was not delicious, then would this lightning dragon think that he was lying to her? More importantly, would that lightning dragon change to something delicious to eat? For example, himself who was only a meter away from its claws. Shangyi was deeply conflicted. He completely did not know how to answer Kong Na's question. "Lord Lightning Dragon." Since Shangyi did not dare to answer, then he could only let Gahan answer. Only to hear Gahan reply in a clear voice without a trace of fear, "To be honest, we have not eaten this thing before, so we also do not know how it tastes." Hearing Gahan's words, Lightning Dragon Kong Na revealed a trace of disappointment and sighed. "Oh no, Kong Na is so hungry. But if Lord Kong Na really wants to know whether this thing tastes good or not, then I have an idea." Gohan continued, "Oh no, what idea do you have?" Kong Na asked curiously. "Actually, if you want to know whether this thing tastes good or not, Lord Kong Na has to personally taste it. So I think it would be better if I cut a small piece of meat from his body and let Lord Kong not have a taste. It's only a small piece of meat. If it is not delicious, Lord Kong Na will not have too much of a reaction. What do you think, Lord Kong Na? Gohan said with a smile. Just a small piece? Kong Na very seriously pondered for a moment. All right, cut a piece of the most delicious part for me to taste. Don't cut a big piece. Kong Na hates disgusting things the most. Understood. Gohan nodded, then pulled out his heavenly sword and looked at Li Xiangtian with some difficulty. My apologies, comrade. This is all I can do. It's fine. It's fine. I have to thank you. It's only a piece of meat, Li Xiangtian said with a smile that was uglier than crying. However, this was already the best result for him. As long as he cut a small piece of meat, he would have a hope of surviving. At least it was better than his entire body being eaten by this dragon. However, Brother Lung Qingxiu, I beg you on my knees, please don't cut off any delicious part of my body. Just pick the most disgusting part of my body to cut off, please, Li Xiangtian said in a low voice. He understood that right now, his life and death were in the hands of Gohan. If Gohan picked the most delicious part of his body and cut it off, then he would be finished. Otherwise, he would have a chance of survival. But there is a problem. Gohan also very seriously thought for a moment, then said in a low voice, I have never eaten a human before, so I don't know which part of your body is the most disgusting. How about this? Now the one I want to cut off is Brother Xiangtian's body. You decide where I want to cut off. This, I have never eaten it before. How would I know? Li Xiangtian felt like he was going crazy. Gohan actually wanted him to decide which part of his body to cut off. This was too cruel. But Gohan quickly said, Brother Xiangtian, you better make up your mind quickly. I think this dragon is getting impatient. Who knows, it might just eat you up in one bite. Leg, cut off the meat from the leg. Hearing Gohan say this, Li Xiangtian immediately said without thinking. All right. Gohan waved the heavenly sword in his hand. Just as he was about to cut off the meat from Li Xiangtian's thigh, Li Xiangtian seemed to have realized something and shouted, No, no. I remember that the most delicious part of a chicken's body is the drumstick. So the most delicious part of a human's body must be the human leg, definitely not the thigh. I think you should cut off the meat from the arm. Oh, Gohan said, then prepare to cut off Li Xiangtian's arm. No, no. In the end, Li Xiangtian shouted again. Chicken feet are also very delicious. I love eating chicken feet the most. So the meat in my hand must also taste very good. Definitely not. How about I cut off the meat from the stomach? The meat, there's a little greasy. Maybe the dragon doesn't like to eat greasy things. So, Gohan decided not to cut off the meat. He just stood there and listened to Li Xiangtian analyze which part of his body was the most delicious. No, if I cut off the meat from the stomach, my internal organs will all come out, and I might die even faster. How about I cut off the meat from the buttocks? That part is also very greasy. That's not right. The buttocks are actually the most delicious part of the thighs. I can't cut off the buttocks. In the time it took to say more than 10 sentences, Li Xiangtian had almost analyzed every part of his body, but in the end he realized that he could not bear to cut off any part of his body, so he was at an impasse. I'm so hungry. Are you done cutting it? Kong Na shouted again. This time, even without Gohan's urging, Li Xiangtian knew he could not hesitate and struggle anymore. Forget it. I don't care where it is, as long as it tastes the worst. Li Xiangtian thought anxiously. What part of a human body tastes the worst? Do you still need to ask? Of course, it's Daddy's poop that tastes the worst. But Daddy's poop isn't the intestines. If I cut off the intestines and there's no medical pod, I'll be finished. That's right. Pee. Pee is smelly and smelly. This dragon definitely won't like it. But in that case, wouldn't I have to? Thinking of this, Li Xiangtian suddenly fell into a dilemma. Either he cut off the most precious and unpalatable part of his body, or he would simply be eaten by this dragon. Although this question was very difficult to decide, the answer was very easy to choose. After hesitating for 2 or 3 seconds, Li Xiangtian revealed a fearless expression and said to Gohan, Brother Lung Qingxiu, please cut off my thing below. Let this dragon have a taste. Oh, okay. Gohan nodded, raised his sword, and cut off that thing. Just when he was about to throw it to Kong Na to have a taste, Kong Na's patience finally reached its limit. Li Xiangtian had not reacted to what had happened, and like a peanut, Kong Na casually threw it into her mouth. Chapter 1077. Oh no, it's really disgusting. The unlucky Li Xiangtian was only chewed in Kong Na's mouth for a while before he was spat out by Kong Na. Obviously, Li Xiangtian was not to Kong Na's taste. Gohan noticed that when Li Xiangtian was spat out, his upper and lower body had already been separated from each other. They ended up in two different locations about 2 to 3 kilometers apart. Unless someone immediately placed Li Xiangtian's upper body into the med bay, Li Xiangtian was dead for sure. I'm so hungry. Kong Na is going to starve to death. After spitting out Li Xiangtian, Kong Na became even hungrier. She flapped her wings impatiently and scanned her surroundings in panic. In the end, she flapped her wings and soared into the sky. Within seconds, she had disappeared from Gohan's line of sight. She left just like that. Shang Yi looked at the direction where Kong Na disappeared with a dazed expression. He found it hard to believe that the powerful Yuan Ko just left without eating him and Gohan. Why? Do you still want her to come back? Gohan rolled his eyes at Shang Yi. There's no time for nonsense. Hurry up and find those guys who fell from the sky. I hope they're still alive. Yes. Shang Yi suddenly remembered that his teammates were still in danger and ran to save them. Shang Yi was busy until the sky turned dark before he finally found all his teammates. Yu Yu and Qin Liang were very unfortunate. They were smashed in a meat paste by a huge rock in front of Gohan. Later on, Gohan also found the huge rock in the pool of corpses that could not be recognized. He could only pack up their belongings, the sword lady, and the dimensional bag to bring back to their families. According to the laws of the Sword Committee, if there was a swordsman among the descendants of the swordsman, then the swordsman's belongings would be handed over to his descendants. Only the descendants of the swordsman could open the dimensional bag and inherit the property inside. However, the sword maiden was public property, and descendants were not qualified to inherit it. It had to be returned to the sword pavilion. If the descendant of the swordsman did not have a swordsman, then the descendant would use his blood and the secret method of the Sword Committee to open the dimensional pocket. All the items inside would be converted into RMB. Then, half of the RMB would be given to the descendant of the swordsman, and the other half would be used as inheritance tax. Aside from the 50% inheritance tax, any rare resources that could only be purchased with hero coins would be a loss if they were converted into RMB according to the official price set by the government. No swordsman would be willing to convert them into RMB. Unfortunately, the swordsman of this family was dead, and this family did not have the capital to bargain with the Sword Committee. Therefore, whether a sword wielder's descendant had a sword wielder or not was extremely important. Having a sword wielder or not was the difference between the heavens and the earth. If the sword wielder did not even have a descendant, then it would be very troublesome. This meant that it would be very difficult for outsiders to open the sword wielder's dimensional pocket, even for Jiandi. Only by using the sword cleansing pool in the Sword Committee could the imprint of the sword wielder in the dimensional pocket be removed, and then the items in the pocket could be taken out. However, if one wanted to use the sword washing pool, they would have to use 100 drops of sovereign blood. This was undoubtedly a massive expenditure, and even if the Sword Committee was unwilling to spend such a large amount of money, the wealth within the dimensional pockets that could not be opened was still quite tempting. Therefore, after some calculations, the Sword Committee decided to activate the sword cleansing pool once they had collected 10,000 dimensional pockets that could not be opened. This would remove all the imprints of the dimensional pockets in one go. In the past 1,000 years, it was said that the sword cleansing pool had only been opened 5 times, and the last time was 80 years ago. According to the information that Gohan had seen when he was still the Sword Pavilion Master, the Sword Committee had accumulated more than 7,000 dimensional pockets that could not be opened because there were no descendants. Gohan estimated that in another 20 to 30 years, the sword cleansing pool would not be opened again. Next was Li Xiangtian. This unlucky guy's upper body was found, but his lower body was missing. However, some traces of Yuan Ko were found at the place where his lower body had fallen. It seemed that although Li Xiangtian's lower body was not eaten by Kong Na, it had been eaten by another Yuan Ko. An hour had passed by the time Shang Yi found Li Xiangtian. Naturally, Li Xiangtian was as dead as a doornail. Shang Yi wiped away a few tears and placed Li Xiangtian's body in a coffin. He placed it in his dimensional pocket and prepared to bring it back to Yuzhong City for burial. This was the tradition of every sword-bearer. Sword-bearers could be sacrificed at any time in battle. Every sword-bearer had encountered their teammates dying in front of them. After these teammates died, the only thing the survivors could do was to help collect their corpses. Even if these two sword-bearers were mortal enemies, as long as one of them died, the other would let go of their hatred and help collect the other's corpse. This would allow the other party to return to their roots and be buried in their base. Everyone said that there were 3 things a sword-bearer must carry in their dimensional pocket. The first was food, the third was a medical pod, and the third was a coffin. These 3 things were an unchanging existence in the dimensional pocket. This time, when Shang Yi went out, he brought a total of 12 coffins in his dimensional pocket. This meant that Shang Yi was prepared for the entire team to be wiped out. He had used 2 coffins to collect Yu Yu and Qin Liang's corpses. Li Xiangtian used another one. The 4 sword-bearers who died before Gahan joined the team also took up 4 coffins. So now, Shang Yi's dimensional pocket had a total of 7 coffins filled with corpses. Just thinking about it made people panic. Su Junjie was also dead. The young man hit a tree stump when he fell, and the tree stump penetrated his abdomen. At this time, Shang Yi was already used to death. After seeing Su Junjie's corpse, he let out a sigh and helped him collect his corpse. Now, there was one more corpse in his dimensional pocket. Zuozong Ryu was very lucky to survive. When he landed, both his legs hit a rock. Although his life was saved, both his legs were completely crippled. He also fell unconscious due to excessive blood loss. Shang Yi could only offer his medical pod and put him inside. Then, he carried him and continued the arduous search. The next to be found was Chu Hanming. This guy was very lucky. When he fell, he was blocked by a huge tree. In the end, he fell into a wet swamp. When Shang Yi and Gu Han used all their strength to pull her out of the swamp, Chu Hanming's body was actually unharmed, without a single injury. It could be said to be a miracle. At this point, only Melauer and Lu Yunyue were left. But according to Chu Hanming, when he was trapped in the swamp, he saw Melauer quickly running away from him. He shouted with all his might, hoping that Melauer would save him, but Melauer didn't pay any attention to him. This made Chu Hanming almost die from anger. It seems that our Miss Melauer must have found something valuable. Gohan speculated. What valuable thing can there be around here? Shang Yi muttered. Suddenly, he came to a realization. I understand. The most valuable thing around here is probably that dimensional brocade pouch. Melauer must have found the place where the dimensional brocade pouch fell and went to look for it. Although everyone had many guesses, when the sky turned completely dark, Gohan and Shang Yi still hadn't found Melauer and Lu Yunyue. They could only give up on the matter. That night, not a single person made a sound. A deep sorrow lingered in their hearts. Although this was a temporary team, everyone had their own plans. There wasn't much trust between the members, but this was still a team that had lived and fought together for nearly 20 days. Just when victory was so close at hand and everyone was ready to reap the rewards, they encountered such a huge accident. Apart from the freezing cold, only 2 members of the entire team survived unscathed. One was lying unconscious in the medical pod, and the other 2 had disappeared without a trace. The rest were completely dead on this piece of land. They could only bring back 8 corpses that could not even be identified as human. Even if she wanted to cry, she wouldn't be able to. She could only spend a silent night. Gahan, who was on sentry duty in the first half of the night, was woken up by the urgent ringing of his personal terminal. His personal terminal would automatically wake him up. This made Gahan immediately understand that something was wrong. Because he was afraid that his whereabouts would be exposed, Gahan took the initiative to turn off the external communication function of his personal terminal. He also took the initiative to block everyone's communication with him, except for 3 people. They were his good disciple Lu Shihua, Song Yifei, who had disappeared for 3 years, and Lian Yanling, who had not been contacted since the underground palace. In other words, only these 3 people could find Gahan through his personal terminal. Gahan glanced at his personal terminal and found that it was Lu Shihua who was calling him. After discovering that his Zifu was sealed, Gahan sent a message to Lu Shihua, telling her that he would find a way to return to Yuzhong City. He asked her not to contact him under normal circumstances, but if there was any major change, she must inform him. Could it be that there was a major change now? Gahan didn't dare to neglect and immediately connected to Lu Shihua's communication. He only heard Lu Shihua's voice on the other side of the communication was very anxious, and there was a hint of fear in it. "Master, it's bad. It's a flood-level Yuan Ko. A white flood-level dragon is attacking our Yuzhong City. The energy of our dimensional shield is running out quickly. We can't hold on much longer." Chapter 1078. Brother Shangyi, do you have a vehicle like a hovercraft? Hurry up and take it out. We need to go to Yuzhong City right now. After ending the call with Lu Shihua, Gahan immediately found Shangyi, who was still sound asleep. "Pavilion Master, did something big happen? You don't look so good." This was the first time Shangyi had seen Gahan look so bad. He immediately realized that something big must have happened in Yuzhong City. Unfortunately, his personal terminal was broken. But thinking of Gahan's bad expression, Shangyi immediately guessed that something big must have happened in Yuzhong City. "It's the lightning dragon that left yesterday. Even I didn't expect it to go to Yuzhong City. Now, it's attacking Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier. Once the dimensional barrier is broken, the whole of Yuzhong City will be in danger." Gahan said anxiously. "No way. Normally, Giant Dragon is only a universe-level Yuan Ko. Yuzhong City has Sword Immortal Ling Su, the dimensional barrier, and the cooperation of tens of thousands of sword bearers. A universe-level Yuan Ko can't even touch a hair of Yuzhong City. Why would Yuzhong City be in such danger?" Shangyi said in confusion. Sword Immortal Ling Su was the chairman of Yuzhong City's Sword Committee. However, Sword Immortal Ling Su was not a native of Yuzhong City. He was a Sword Immortal transferred from Los Angeles City. Yanjing City had the most immortal sword tier sword bearers, so it was reasonable to send an immortal sword tier sword bearer from Yanjing City. But the problem was that the relationship between Yuzhong City and Yanjing City was extremely bad. Yuzhong City could not accept a sword bearer from Yanjing City as their supreme leader, so they could only settle for the next best thing. They transferred an immortal sword tier sword bearer from Los Angeles City. Although this immortal sword wielder was from Los Angeles, he had 80% Huaxia blood in him. Thus, the people of Yuzhong City were not averse to such a leader. Thus, Sword Immortal Ling Su successfully became the chairman of Yuzhong City's Sword Committee. However, according to the agreement between Sword Immortal Ling Su and the Yuzhong City Sword Committee, once an immortal sword rank sword wielder was born in Yuzhong City, Sword Immortal Ling Su had to immediately step down and hand over the position of chairman of the Sword Committee to a native Yuzhong City immortal sword rank sword wielder, no matter how well Sword Immortal Ling Su performed. What if that lightning dragon isn't a universe-class Yuan Ko or an Eon-class Yuan Ko, but a flood-class Yuan Ko? Gahan said hurriedly. What? Shangyi was shocked. There's a flood-level Western dragon? At this time, Shangyi couldn't help but be surprised. In the nearly 1,000 years of history after the Great Calamity, there had been at least 50 Western giant dragon bandits, if not 100. These Western giant dragons were generally of very high levels, with the weakest being a nether-level bandit, which was equivalent to a human spirit sword-level sword-bearer. However, the upper limit of Western dragons was not high. The most powerful Western dragon was only an Eon-class Yuan Ko. From the beginning to the end, none of the Western dragons could reach the Flood class, which was the strength of an Emperor-class sword-bearer. Western dragons can never break through the Flood class. This was a setting that almost all humans had reached a consensus on. They never thought that this setting would be broken today. A flood-class Western dragon had appeared in front of everyone, completely breaking the consensus that had been formed for 1,000 years. Could it be that there's a mistake somewhere? How could this lightning dragon be a flood-class Yuan-ko? Shang Yi still speculated in disbelief. It can't be wrong. Sword Immortal Ling Su has already been defeated by her, and he was only able to last for less than 10 minutes. The Wangshu Sword Empress personal shield only has less than 10% of its power left. This is definitely the power that a run-grade Yuan bandit can possess. There's no mistaking it. Gohan said with certainty. The Wangshu sword was Sword Immortal Ling Su's Immortal Sword Dame. Although the Wangshu sword was ranked lower among the Immortal Sword Dame, it was a Confucian sword dame with strong defense. In addition, Sword Immortal Ling Su was a veteran Sword Immortal with more than 10 million sword elements and had reached the level of an Emperor-class sword-bearer. He could withstand any Yuan-ko below the Flood class for more than 10 hours, but now he only lasted for 10 minutes. There was no doubt about the level of this lightning dragon. It had to be a Flood-class Yuan-ko. Shang Yi obviously understood this, so after hearing Gohan's words, he didn't say anything more. Instead, he fell into deep anxiety. Shang Yi's family was lucky enough to escape last time and did not die in the attack. But last time, there was no Flood class and Desolate class Yuan-ko to attack Yuzhong City. At the same time, there were two Immortal Sword tier sword bearers who fought to the death to barely survive. But this time, Yuzhong City was facing a Flood class Yuan-ko, and Yuzhong City only had one Immortal Sword tier sword bearer left. Moreover, this Immortal Sword tier sword bearer was not born and raised in Yuzhong City. It was hard to believe that such a person would live and die with Yuzhong City. Maybe when he realized that things were not going well, he would immediately escape. He would not fight to the death for Yuzhong City. If that happened, Yuzhong City would be in extreme danger again. Hao Tian Jindi and Long Shi Jindi. These two Jindi will definitely make a move. As long as Hao Tian Jindi makes a move, Yuzhong City will be able to resist. At this time, Shang Yi could only place his last hope on Hao Tian Jindi and Long Shi Jindi. We can't place our hopes on others. We have to contribute our strength to Yuzhong City. Although Gohan said this, he actually knew that Hao Tian Jindi had entered the Ascension period and could ascend at any time. The Ascension period sounded very powerful. In Xinsha novels, it was the strongest existence in the cultivation world. However, in reality, the Ascension period was when Jindi was at his weakest. At this time, Jindi's power and sword essence would begin to decline rapidly. From an Emperor Sword tier sword bearer with tens of millions of sword essence, he would eventually become an ordinary person with no sword essence. Then, Jindi would be attracted by the power of the void and dimension, and he would be unstoppably sucked into the void. This was also the origin of the term ascension. The process of being sucked into the void looked like an immortal ascending. However, most people knew in their hearts that there was only one result of ascending into the void, and that was to die in the void. However, in order to obtain a good omen and at the same time not give up that little bit of hope, they called this Sword Emperor Ascension. They said that the Sword Emperor could ascend to another world and continue living in that world. Since Hao Tian Jindi had entered the Ascension period, it meant that Hao Tian Jindi's sword essence was constantly declining. As for Hao Tian Jindi's true strength, only Hao Tian Jindi himself knew. However, according to Lu Shihua's information, Hao Tian Jindi had entered the Ascension period a year ago. The Ascension period usually lasted about 2 to 3 years. In other words, Hao Tian Jindi's strength should have been reduced by half. He might still be an Emperor Sword tier sword bearer, but he might have fallen to the level of an Immortal Sword tier. According to past practices, after entering the Ascension period, Jindi would live in seclusion. Unless humanity was facing a crisis of extinction, he would definitely not reveal his true strength. This way, Yuan-ko would not know what Jindi's current strength was. This way, Jindi would still be a strong deterrent. Otherwise, once Jindi attacked, Yuan Ko would know that Jindy had entered the ascension period. Humans would have one less Jindy strength, and the situation would become very dangerous. Moreover, once Jindy attacked during the ascension period, it would also speed up Jindy's ascension. This was because once the ascension period used the sword essence in one's body, the sword essence that was used would not be recovered. To put it bluntly, at this time, Hao Tian Jindy seemed to have been hit by a debuff that continuously reduced the upper limit of his sword essence and could not recover it. In short, according to Gahan's estimation, Hao Tian Jindy would probably not attack. The only one who could attack was Longsure Jindy, who was in the prime of his life. However, Longsure Jindy was in London. Even if he wanted to rush over, it would take at least a day. Moreover, the desolate level Yuan Ko of the Martyr's Palace camp had been staring at Longsure Jindy. It would be very difficult for Longsure Jindy to attack. Originally, Yahweh was also staring at Longsure Jindy, but recently, Heaven's forces had shrunk very much. It was very difficult to see any traces of angels in the world, and Yahweh had never shown up again. Otherwise, Longsure Jindy would have had a terrible headache. According to Lu Shihua, there was really no one in Yuzhong City who could help. Based on the rate at which the dimensional barrier was being consumed, it would take at most 3 days for the dimensional barrier to be broken by the giant dragon. That was why Lu Shihua had panicked and asked Guhan for help. However, Lu Shihua did not ask for help from Gahan because she hoped that Gahan could help. She already knew that Gahan's Zifu was sealed. At this time, Gahan was unable to save Yuzhong City. She hoped that Gahan could contact Liunian Ling. At this moment, only the sword bearers of the Liunian clan could defeat the flood-level Yuan Ko. However, Lu Shihua did not know that Liunian Ling had cut off all contact with Gahan. Even if Gahan wanted to ask Liunian Ling for help, he could not find her. Therefore, at this moment, Gahan could only rely on himself. I do have a hovercraft, but it is only an old model, and it can't be used in the lush jungle. We will have to walk for at least a few days to leave this jungle, Shang Yi said in a dilemma. The hovercraft was simply useless in the lush jungle. As long as it was started, it would only end up crashing into a tree. And Pavilion Master, what can we do even if we rush to Yuzhong City? Your Zifu has already been sealed, and Chu Hanming and I are only a treasure rank sword bearer and an ancient rank sword bearer. If we go there, we won't even be able to withstand one of the dragon's claws, Shang Yi said worriedly. You can just inject sword essence into the dimensional wall. Gahan did not listen to Shang Yi at all. He directly asked Shang Yi to take out the hovercraft, and then chase the remaining 2 people away. Zuozong then threw them into the trunk of the hovercraft in a medical pod. Then he stepped on the gas pedal of the hovercraft and turned into a bolt of lightning that began to run wildly in the lush jungle. Chapter 1079. If someone from the Yinjing City Traffic Management Bureau saw this hovercraft racing through the forest, they would definitely exclaim that the white specter that had disturbed everyone 3 years ago had returned. But this time, he had moved the battlefield from the streets of Yinjing City to the forest filled with tall trees. The danger factor was more than 10 times higher than before. Shang Yi sat in the front passenger seat, expressionlessly. It wasn't that Shang Ye's spiritual cultivation had reached a level where he could face everything calmly. It was because his face was so stiff that he couldn't make any expression. He was scared out of his wits. When Shang Yi first bought this second-hand hovercraft, it was because it was very cheap. It was only 1/10 of the price of other hovercrafts that were popular on the market. Even a sword wielder like Shang Yi could barely afford it. So, this hovercraft was not only a second-hand hovercraft, it was also an extremely old model that had been produced for more than 60 years. Normally, Shang Yi wouldn't dare to drive it over 200 kilometers per hour on good ground. Otherwise, this hovercraft could fall apart at any time. But Shang Yi never thought that his hovercraft would one day be able to reach 600 kilometers per hour. Moreover, it was in a forest filled with thick trees. Sometimes, the distance between 2 trees was less than a meter. There were hundreds of times when Shang Yi thought that he was going to crash into a tree, but a light flashed in front of him and the tree dodged him. Thinking up to this point, Shang Yi looked at Guhan, who was fully focused on driving the hover car, with even more admiration. At the same time, he thought to himself, even if this pavilion master can't remove the seal on his Zifu in the future, with his driving skills, he can still become a professional hover car racer. Winning the Grand Slam of the professional league would probably be a very simple matter. But at the same time, Shang Yi didn't notice that Gahan was sweating profusely. His eyes were bloodshot. Gahan had been racing in the forest for 4 to 5 hours. The long period of concentration had almost exhausted Gahan's spirit. Moreover, Gahan didn't have the physical foundation of a sword wielder. This kind of exhaustion was very scary for a normal person. No, I need to rest. Gahan, who was driving, also realized that his energy had reached its limit. Gahan was not the kind of person who would waste his energy on a dead end. He decided to ease off the accelerator and slowly reduce the speed of the car. He wanted to find a place to sleep and replenish his energy. At this moment, something unforeseen happened. The big tree in front suddenly stood up. That's right, the big tree stood up and moved a little to his left. Do not underestimate this small distance. In order to travel through the forest, Gahan had calculated every little bit of distance to the limit. Damn it! Why is there a treant here? Gahan couldn't help but curse. It turned out that the moving tree was not a real tree, but a treant Yuan Ko. These treants were no different from normal trees. They would only move occasionally. Moreover, Gahan had used up too much of his energy, so he couldn't tell if the tree in front of him was a real tree or a real one. He didn't even consider the possibility of a tree suddenly moving. When Gahan decided to turn the steering wheel, it was already too late. The hovercraft crashed into the big tree. Gahan, who was speeding and driving while tired, could not escape the fate of driving against the law. A tragic accident happened in the nameless forest. In a lush forest, a hovercraft was burning with white flames on the ground. Shang Yi, who was covered in wounds, climbed out of the wreckage with great effort. Shang Yi, who had already considered the possibility of crashing into the hovercraft, had kept his sword Maiden nestled in his hands. As a result, his personal shield took a considerable amount of damage, allowing Shang Yi to escape with his life. Chu Hanming was also very lucky. Although the hovercraft was sent flying, his back seat didn't suffer too much damage. So even though he didn't have his sword Maiden in his hands, he was still able to climb out unscathed. The most unlucky one was probably Zhuo Zhongryu. Because the medical pod had received a huge impact, it was directly deformed. Zhuo Zhongryu, whose body was only half repaired, also woke up from the medical pod with a groan. When Shang Yi and the others climbed out of the hovercraft, they were surprised to find that Gahan was not in the hovercraft. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. I think I saw Master Lung Qingqiu fly out, Chu Hanming said, scratching his head. Beside the wreckage of the hovercraft was an extremely steep slope. If Gahan had really flown out, he would probably have rolled down the slope. Only the heavens knew if he could keep his life. Gahan had indeed flown out. The impact from the side had sent Gahan flying out of the window of the hovercraft. And Gahan had indeed rolled down the slope, hitting countless rocks and trees along the way. When Gahan finally stopped in a certain position, he felt as if all the bones in his body had been broken. From the perspective of an ordinary person, Gahan would die on the spot in less than 5 minutes. Hey, are you going to die again? Just as Gahan was in a daze, he suddenly heard Xian Yuan's sword's voice in his ears. Probably, Gahan said absent-mindedly, and then he fainted. Aya, why is it that every time I wake up, you unlucky bastard are going to die? Xian Yuan's sword sharply complained. No, you can't die. I haven't finished eating yet. Xian Yuan's sword whispered. There's no other way. Seems like this is the only way. When Gahan woke up from his coma again, he was surprised to find that not only did he not feel any pain, but he also felt abnormally relaxed and powerful. It was as if he had returned to the time when his Zifu had not been sealed. His whole body was full of power. Gahan, you're finally awake. Hurry up and let us out. We're about to suffocate in the scabbard. Gahan, are you okay? Did something happen to you? Why did you keep us locked in the dimensional pocket? Brother, Xiaoyan misses you so much. Xiaoyan misses you so much that she can't sleep all day. Hey, you bastard, what did my red star Erguo to go? Didn't you take my red star Erguo 2 for yourself? Master, it's good that you're okay. It's good that you're okay. There were 6 different voices in Guhan's head at the same time. Among these voices, some were coquettish, some were concerned, some were longing, some were urgent, some were calm, and some were weak. But all these voices, without exception, contained concern and longing for Gahan. Qingpin, starting point. Xiaoyun, heavenly reliance. Juzi, flowing water. How come you can all talk to me? Hearing these voices, Gahan was moved and incomparably shocked. These voices had not appeared in Gahan's head for more than 10 days. And at this moment, didn't their sudden appearance mean that his Zifu had already? Gahan did not have the time to respond to his sword maiden's concern. Instead, he immediately sank his consciousness into his Zifu. When a Zifu was sealed, Gahan's consciousness would be blocked outside the Zifu and would not be able to enter it. But in reality, Gahan didn't feel any hindrance. He entered the Purple Palace without any hindrance. He also saw the 6 sword scars in his Purple Palace flickering with a bright light. This beautiful scene, Gahan hadn't seen it for more than 10 days. This is great. I didn't think that I would actually obtain a blessing in disguise. The seal on my Zifu has been removed. Although Gahan did not understand why a car accident would cause his Zifu to be unsealed, this was undoubtedly a great thing. This meant that Gahan's true strength had been unsealed. Gahan, why are you ignoring us? Qingpin is going to be angry. Seeing that Gahan did not respond to his question, Qingpin immediately said angrily, "Also, quickly release us from the dimensional pocket. Qingpin is going crazy inside." Okay, I'll release you now. Gahan laughed, and without saying anything, he released all the sword maidens from the dimensional pocket. At the same time, he also released all of them into their sword maidens form. One by one, beautiful figures appeared beside Gahan. Seeing these familiar faces, Gahan was very happy. He had long been accustomed to living together with his sword maidens. More than 10 days without seeing his sword maidens, Gahan's heart felt as if it was being scratched by thousands of monkeys. I'm sorry everyone. My Zifu has been sealed, so everyone can only stay in the dimensional pocket. Gahan casually explained the reason why he left them in the dimensional pocket. But halfway through his explanation, Gahan could not continue because he found that his sword maidens were not listening to him. Instead, all of their attention was focused on his body. Or rather, all of their attention was focused on his face and chest. Could it be? An extremely bad guess emerged in Gahan's heart. Then, he casually touched his chest. The huge, soft touch told Gahan that a situation even worse than the seal on his Zifu had appeared. Chapter 1080. Gu Xianyuan. This name, which Gahan had almost forgotten, appeared in Gahan's mind again. That's right, Gahan no longer existed. In his place was the beautiful Gu Xianyuan. Xianyuan's sword. Xianyuan's sword, come out. Gahan shouted in his sea of consciousness. Not long after, a lazy voice was heard. What's wrong? If you want to thank me, then forget it. What's our relationship? Old friend. Xianyuan's sword. Did you cause me to become like this? Gahan said angrily. How can you say that? The Xianyuan sword was also a little displeased. Don't be mistaken. If I hadn't helped you and activated your body, I'm afraid you would have died here by now. Gahan was instantly speechless. If what the Xianyuan sword said was true, then Gahan really had to thank it for saving his life. What's going on? Can you explain it more clearly? Gahan's tone was much calmer. Don't you know how badly you fell just now? All the bones in your body were broken and more than half of your internal organs were crippled. If I didn't think of a way to save you, you would have died in less than 5 minutes. Even a saint wouldn't have been able to save you. Fortunately, I discovered that the power of the 6 revolutions immortal pill wasn't completely consumed. Instead, it was stored inside your body. However, because you hate that body very much and your willpower is very strong, this power has always been suppressed by your subconscious. If I want to save you, I have no other way but to draw out the power of the 6 revolutions immortal pill and let this power repair your body. Because this power was fused into your body through me, it was easy for me to draw out this power. Of course, side effects are inevitable. You've already experienced it once, so it's no big deal to go through it again. After listening to the Xianyuan sword's explanation, Guhan stopped talking and began to sense his body with all his might. He found that it was just as the Xianyuan sword had said. His body had completely recovered, and he was even more powerful than before. At the same time, there was a power within his body that was completely different from sword essence. It flashed with golden light and fused with his blood, making his blood look like a sovereign bloodline. Thank you, Lady Xianyuan. I was wrong about you, Guhan said to the Xianyuan sword in shame. She had saved him, but he still lost his temper at her. He shouldn't have done that. I'm fine. Who asked us to be good gay friends? The Xianyuan sword laughed nonchalantly. However, hearing this made Guhan feel a bit awkward. He and the Xianyuan sword were clearly a man and a woman. So how could they be good gay friends? However, Guhan immediately realized that he was not Guhan right now, but a woman. From a certain point of view, he and the Xianyuan sword had become good gay friends. After understanding this, Guhan wanted to beat the Xianyuan sword up. Then can I change back to my original appearance? Guhan asked a little anxiously. He did not want to wait another 20 days for Gu Xian's fate like last time. Now that the 6 revolutions immortal pill's power has completely fused with your blood, before your body digests this power, it's impossible for you to turn back into Guhan, the Xianyuan sword said after thinking for a moment. The Xianyuan sword thought for a while and said, of course, it's not impossible to change back to solid cold. If you change your golden blood, you can immediately change back to solid cold. Blood change? Guhan's eyes lit up when he heard the Xianyuan sword words. Blood change was not difficult for modern technology. Guhan could even use his celestial sword-grade medical pod to do this. In just half an hour, Guhan could change all the blood in his body, and Guhan would be able to turn back into a man. Thinking of this, Guhan took out his medical pod without hesitation. Just as he was about to change his blood, he heard the Xianyuan sword suddenly say, that's right. The 6 revolutions immortal pill's power could have strengthened your body to the level of a 4-stage Yuan-ko. Even without the sword lady, you would still be a 4-stage Yuan-ko. It's just that a few years ago, when you regained control of your body, you forcefully suppressed this power in your subconscious. That's why your body has not been strengthened and is still at the level of an ordinary person. The Xianyuan sword paused and said, now, the 6 revolutions immortal pill's power is slowly strengthening your body through your blood. In about a month, your body will be strengthened to the level of a 4-stage Yuan-ko. But if you change the blood in your body, you will no longer be able to possess the body of a meteor rank Yuan-ko. You should think carefully about your choice. This old lady can't be bothered with you. Hearing the Xianyuan sword's words, Guhan hesitated for nearly a minute before silently putting the medical pod back into his dimensional pocket. In the 10 days since his purple palace had been sealed and he had become an ordinary human, although Guhan behaved carelessly and didn't care, the pain of losing his power lingered in Guhan's heart all the time. Guhan didn't want to experience this feeling of powerlessness again in his life. If he could have the power of a 4-stage Yuan-ko, then even if Guhan's purple palace was sealed, he could still compete with those powerful Yuan-ko. The benefits were self-evident, and Guhan couldn't refuse such a temptation. Forget it. It's just a month of fate. I'll just endure it, and it'll be over. Guhan used these words to convince himself. However, when Guhan saw the curious and puzzled sword ladies around him, Guhan felt a headache coming on. How should he explain it to these sword ladies? Who are you? Why are our sword marks in your body? Where did Guhan go? Was he taken away by you? Just when Guhan was thinking about how to explain it to his sword ladies, a golden long sword was pressed against his throat. As long as it's slightly pierced downwards, Gohan's throat would immediately be pierced. Chidian, if you put your sword on my neck again, I'll specifically lick your belly button in the future. Gu Xianyuan righteously said such an embarrassing sentence, making Chidian so embarrassed that it immediately put down the sword. Not knowing why, Chidian's sensitive point was its own belly button. When Gohan and Chidian were having sex, as long as Gohan licked Chidian's belly button, Chidian's entire body would leak out and become a pool of mud lying on the bed. This is something only Gohan and I know. Could it be that this woman is really my Gohan? Chidian thought in disbelief. However, when it took a closer look at Gu Xuanyuan's face, it really did look similar to Gohan, except that her skin and temperament had become more feminine. And you, Ichian, you've already secretly drunk that bottle of Ergutu. Don't even think about blaming it on me. Xiaoyan, forget it. I'm not your brother, and I don't want to be your sister. Don't look at me like that. Sure, Shui, or should I call you Reina Takasaka? Juzi. All right, hurry up and explain to them. When we lived in Lasihua's house, I was like this too. You're the only sword lady who knows the inside story. Please explain it to your sisters. Qingpin, why are you looking at me like that? You cheater. If you dare to look at me like that again, don't even think about eating meat anymore. Qingpin's infatuated look made Gohan's heart tremble. This girl's entire attention was focused on Gu Xuanyuan's chest. She looked like a little baby who had been starving for a few days, and she couldn't wait to jump into Gohan's arms and happily breastfeed. Gohan. Qingpin suddenly became infatuated. Qingpin came over and asked a very deep question. Gohan, can Qingpin stay on your chest from now on? Once Gohan's flat chest turned into Gu Xianyuan's mountainous chest, the exclusive nurturing pouch for the poor really didn't need to be hung on his chest anymore. It's okay. Douyu suddenly jumped onto Gu Xuanyuan's body, and then pinched Gu Xuanyuan's opal, and said with a smile, Qingpin, from now on, your armchair will be upgraded to a fully automatic massage chair. Lord Lung Qingxiu. Lord Lung Qingxiu. Although their bodies were riddled with scars, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming were still very responsible in searching for traces of Gohan. Of course, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming felt that Gohan most likely wouldn't be able to survive. Their biggest hope was to find Gohan's corpse, so that Gohan wouldn't turn into a pile of bones in this wilderness. Captain, look, aren't there a few people in front? Chu Hanming suddenly discovered a few human figures in the forest in front of them. Be careful. It's very likely that it's a humanoid Yuan Ko. Immediately release your sword lady. Shang Yi immediately said very vigilantly. Chu Hanming nodded, and the two of them simultaneously released their sword lady. You two are Shang Yi and Chu Hanming. When Shang Yi and Chu Hanming released their sword lady, the few human figures had already appeared in front of them, causing Shang Yi and Chu Hanming to be greatly alarmed. Previously, the distance between the two sides was clearly more than a few hundred meters, but in the time it took for the sword lady to be released, the other party had already arrived in front of them. Just from this speed, they were definitely not a match for these few people. What a beautiful woman! After experiencing the initial fear, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming couldn't help but praise in their hearts when they raised their heads to observe the other party. The one who appeared in front of them was actually a peerless beauty that transcended the mortal world. Although she was wearing men's casual clothes and ankle-wrapped trousers, dressed like a tomboy, this was still unable to conceal the peerless beauty of this beauty. On the contrary, this man's clothes brought out a different kind of beauty. If I can have a one-night stand with this kind of beauty, then my life will be worth it. Shang Yi couldn't help but think. At the same time, his heart started to pound, as if he had returned to the time when he first met her in high school. Chapter 1081. In addition to the leading beauty, there were 3 other girls behind her, and all of them were exceptionally beautiful. Of course, the appearance of these 3 girls could not be compared to that of the leading girl. The difference between the 2 of them was a full grade. Beauty? How do you know our names? Have we met somewhere before? Could we have met in a dream? Chu Hanming shamelessly leaned forward, wanting to get closer, to Gu Xianyuan. I hate men. Get the hell away from me. Gu Xianyuan sent Chu Hanming flying with a kick without any trace of politeness. However, Gu Xianyuan controlled her strength very well. Although Chu Hanming was sent flying, he did not suffer any serious injuries. With a carp flip, he stood up once again. However, he did not dare to get too close to Gu Xianyuan. Young lady, our personal terminals have been damaged, so we can't identify you. Dare I ask, are you humans or Yuan Ko? Shang Yi wasn't like Chu Hanming, who was bewitched by Gu Xuanyuan's beauty and still remembered to confirm her identity. Watch carefully, Gu Xianyuan said expressionlessly. In the next second, the three girls behind her all turned into three different treasured swords. One was a blue long sword that was like the sea, one was a blood-red dagger-like short sword, and one was a completely black wooden sword. This was the best evidence. Besides the sword-bearer, who else could turn a living beauty into a treasured sword in an instant? So, it's a famous sword-rank sword-bearer. Shang Yi and Chu Hanming were shocked. They didn't expect that the three beautiful girls behind this beauty were her sword ladies, and she was actually a famous sword-rank sword-bearer. After the shock, Shang Yi and Chu Hanming couldn't help but become excited. In this desolate forest ruins, there were dangers everywhere, and the original team of 9 only had 3 people left. One of them even had both of his legs crippled. Shang Yi even felt that there was a 95% chance that he would be able to return to Yuzhong City alive. Now, even though he didn't know why a famous sword-rank sword-bearer would appear here alone, there was no doubt that the other party was a famous sword-rank sword-bearer. With the protection of a famous sword-rank sword-bearer, his chances of returning to Yuzhong City alive had greatly increased. How should I address you, my lord? Why would he appear here? You can even call out our names? Shang Yi asked curiously. My name is Gu Xianyuan. Gu Xianyuan coldly spoke up. I am Guhan's elder sister. 10 days ago, Guhan sent me a message, and I came here specifically to save him. So it's Lord Guhan's elder sister, Shang Yi said with sudden realization. Looking carefully, the appearance of this beauty was indeed very similar to that of Guhan. It seemed that they must be biological siblings. 10 days ago was just before she met Guhan. Guhan, whose Zifu was sealed, would certainly think of a way to get his relatives to save her. It was only when he met his own team that he hid his identity and joined. 10 days later, his sister happened to find this place. Everything was reasonable, and there was nothing suspicious about it. Oh, Miss Gu Xianyuan, Lord Guhan got into a car accident, and we don't know where he is. The two of us have been looking for him for a long time, but we still can't find him. We should hurry and find him. Shang Yi suddenly remembered his original mission and said anxiously, There's no need to look. Gu Xianyuan waved her hand. Guhan's injuries are too severe. A normal medbay is unable to treat him. I've already asked my teacher to use the giant void hand to bring him back to Yinjing City for treatment. You guys don't have to look for him anymore. Gu Xianyuan said without thinking. Hearing Gu Xianyuan say this, Shang Yi became even more respectful. To be able to use the giant void hand, then Gu Xuanyuan's teacher must be an immortal sword-bearer. Using the giant void hand would consume a lot of energy. If one didn't dote on Gu Xianyuan, an ordinary immortal sword-bearer wouldn't bear to use the giant void hand. It seemed that Gu Xuanyuan's backer was as strong as her brother Guhan. What are you guys talking about? Why don't I understand anything? Who is Guhan? Aren't we looking for Lord Lung Qingxiu? Gu Xianyuan and Shang Ye's conversation made Chu Hanming, who was at the side, dumbfounded. Miss Gu this. Shang Yi looked at Gu Xianyuan tentatively, meaning to ask if he could tell Chu Hanming about Guhan. Say it. Guhan is already safe now. There's no need to hide it anymore. Gu Xianyuan nodded her head. Shang Yi then told Chu Hanming everything in detail. Chu Hanming's face was filled with excitement as he shouted. So Lord Lung Qingxiu is Guhan Lord. I was actually able to stay with my idol for more than 10 days. It's really too blissful. It's a pity that I didn't have time to ask Lord Guhan for an autograph. Otherwise, I really wouldn't have anything else to ask for. Who would have thought that Chu Hanming was actually a fan of Guhan? Actually, from the content of their conversation, It could be seen that Chu Hanming admired Gahan a lot. Miss Gu, what should we do now? We'll listen to you. Shang Yi immediately said after confirming Gu Xuanyuan's identity. He was determined to stick by Gu Xuanyuan's side. Otherwise, only death awaited him. Of course, we have to think of a way to return to Yuzhong City. Before Gahan left, he repeatedly urged me to think of a way to save Yuzhong City. I can't just sit back and do nothing. Gu Xianyuan said indifferently. Do you still have a hover car? We'll go to Yuzhong City immediately. What? Gu Xuanyuan's words made Shang Yi dumbfounded. Miss Gu, don't you have a hover car with you? Then how did you get here? What kind of joke was this? Gu Xianyuan was a dignified, famed sword-tier sword wielder. She even had an immortal sword-tier sword wielder as her master. How could she not have a hover car? And she still had to ask him for a hover car. Wasn't this a little too funny? Regarding this, Gu Xianyuan also expressed her helplessness. Although the droplet flying car was still on her, Gu Xianyuan did not know how to recharge it. Therefore, the droplet flying car was still unusable. If she had known earlier, she would not have pretentiously given the Yanhuang 3008 to the Yanjing City Traffic Bureau. Otherwise, she would still have a hover car on her. What's so strange about that? Of course, I have my own hover car. It's just that I was worried about Gahan's safety. On the way here, I accidentally hit a rock, and that hover car was scrapped. Otherwise, I would have found my brother 7 or 8 days ago. Why would I wait until now? Gu Xianyuan said coldly. What a pair of siblings. Hover cars are all used for crashing. Shang Yi muttered to himself. Then he spread his hands and said, Then there's no other way. My hover car met the same fate as Miss Gu's. Right now, the wreckage is still smoking. I really don't have a second hover car on me. What about you? Do you have a hover car? Gu Xianyuan turned to ask Chu Hanming. Miss Gu, why are you asking him? He's an ancient sword rank swordsman. How could he have a hover car? Shang Yi said with a pained expression. His second-hand hover car had cost him 3 years of savings to buy. Chu Hanming had only been a swordsman for a few years. He probably did not even have enough for his daily expenses. How could he have the money to buy a hover car? But reality slapped Shang Yi in the face. Chu Hanming actually nodded and said, Yes, I have a hover car here. After saying that, Chu Hanming took out a luxurious hover car from his dimensional pocket. Moreover, the model of this hover car was very familiar to Gahan. It was a Yanhuang 3008 hover car that Guhan had given to someone before. Oh my God! Seeing this hover car, Shang Yi felt terrible. He felt as if he had been cheated. Chu Hanming, you liar. What did you get such a good hover car? You didn't steal it, did you? Oh my God! And it's a Yanhuang 3008. Yesterday, when Lord Gahan asked for a hover car, why didn't you take it out? Now I have to use my poor second-hand hover car. Why are your words so unpleasant? This is a birthday present from my father. I've always been reluctant to drive it. Chu Hanming rolled his eyes at Shang Yi. Besides, I didn't know that Lord Lung Qingxiu was Lord Gahan yesterday. Otherwise, I would definitely have taken this hover car out. With my good car, perhaps Lord Gahan would not have been injured. Hearing Chu Hanming's words, Gu Xianyuan looked at him thoughtfully. Chu Hanming's father had actually given him a Yanhuang 3008 as a birthday present. It seemed like Chu Hanming's family background was not simple. Perhaps he was also a swordsman from a swordsman family. But it should not be an emperor swordsman family. There was not a single emperor swordsman with the surname Chu in Yuzhong City. All right, there's no time for nonsense. Get in the car. Gu Xianyuan could not be bothered to listen to these two bickering. She directly sat in the driver's seat and stretched out her hand to ask Chu Hanming for the car keys. It was as if the car was her own. Miss Xianyuan, take it. Chu Hanming eagerly placed the car keys in Gu Xuanyuan's hand. At the same time, he used his fingerprint to unlock the Yanhuang 3008's AI identification system. This could be considered as completely handing over the driving rights to Gu Xianyuan. Hey, Chu Hanming, are you crazy? These siblings have already crashed 2 cars. Do you want to crash a third? Shang Yi pulled Chu Hanming aside and said, It's fine. Miss Xianyuan is so beautiful. Her driving skills must be very good. I believe in her. Chu Hanming said with a flushed face. He completely ignored Shang Ye's advice and directly sat in the front passenger seat. Sigh. Shang Ye let out a long sigh and also sat in the back seat. This super maglev sports car began to run wildly through the forest at a high speed it had never reached before in its life. F*CK, they're definitely siblings. And the older sister's driving is even scarier than the younger brother's. Feeling that the speed was even scarier than when Gahan was driving, Shang Yi could not help but shrink into a corner and tremble. Wait a minute, did I forget someone? Shang Yi suddenly thought to himself. Chapter 1082. What did Yin Jing City say? In the conference room of the Yuzhong Sword Committee, the bigwigs of Yuzhong City were having an anxious meeting. Among them were sword spirits of Sinew, sword spirits of Mu Shui, and sword spirits of Tiger Roar. There was also Shi Jun, the head of the Jinni family. In short, all the bigwigs of Yuzhong City were present. It seemed very normal for these people to appear here, but in fact, it was very abnormal. At least when Sword Immortal Baiju Wudao and Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky Lu Lei were in charge of Yuzhong City, these heads of the Jinni family would not appear in the conference room. If the sword spirits did not hold corresponding positions in the sword committee, they would not appear in the conference room either. In short, when Sword Immortal Baiju Wudao and Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky, Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky, Sword Immortal held a meeting, they would not be in a hurry to see the person with the highest authority in Yuzhong City. Instead, they would gather officials who held corresponding positions or people with great professional ability to participate in such a meeting. Only by having a meeting with a professional and capable person could they discuss the most correct solution. And a meeting with these people with the highest authority could only result in endless disputes and compromises for the benefit of all parties. In the end, a solution that took care of everyone's interests but was not the most correct solution. This was something that the past chairman of the Yuzhong Sword Committee had tried their best to avoid. However, because there was a vacancy in Yuzhong City for a Sword Immortal level sword holder, a Sword Immortal level sword holder from Los Angeles became the chairman of Yuzhong City Sword Committee. This Sword Immortal level sword holder, who had no foundation, could only rely on the help of various forces to manage the entire Yuzhong City. Therefore, these people with the highest authority would inevitably appear at this conference table. Yanjing City said that they are also under great pressure. This time, it is not a large-scale deployment of Yuan Ko. It is only a flood-level Yuan Ko, which does not meet the standard of supporting us. Therefore, Yanjing City will not send any forces to help us. This Yuan Ko needs to be taken care of by Yuzhong City ourselves. A person dressed like a secretary said, with his head lowered. These shameless things. How dare they play tricks on us at this time? Sure, Jiyuan cursed, but he could not blame Yanjing City. According to the agreement between the base cities, only when the base city was in danger of destruction, the other base cities would send forces to help the base city. Although the one attacking Yuzhong City right now was a flood-level bandit who had defeated Sword Immortal Ling Su within 10 minutes, there was only one flood-level bandit. Apart from him, there were no other bandit groups attacking Yuzhong City. Therefore, in terms of overall strength, a single flood-level bandit was not enough to force the other base cities to save Yuzhong City. Logically speaking, Yuzhong City shouldn't be afraid of such a flood-level bandit. With the dimensional wall system around Yuzhong City, a flood-level bandit's attack wouldn't be able to break through the defense of the dimensional wall system. This was because the dimensional wall system could constantly absorb the sword essences of other sword bearers and convert these sword essences into its own shield energy. There are tens of thousands of sword bearers in Yuzhong City. Once these sword bearers injected sword essences into the dimensional wall system at the same time, the energy recovered by the dimensional wall system would be far greater than the energy consumed by a flood-level Yuan Ko. The dimensional wall system would not be in any danger of being breached. If the dimensional wall system was not breached, Yuzhong City would naturally be safe. Only when tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of Yuan-Ko attacked the dimensional wall system at the same time could the replenishment of the sword essences in the dimensional wall system not keep up with the speed of consumption, and there would be the danger of the dimensional wall breaking. Therefore, after this white dragon defeated Sword Immortal Ling Su, Yuzhong City did not pay much attention to it. They only asked the sword-bearers in charge of defending the city wall to inject their sword essences into the dimensional wall system to maintain the dimensional wall's energy at full capacity. This way, after this white dragon attacked for a while and found that it could not wear down the dimensional wall system, it would retreat on its own and not bother Yuzhong City anymore. Since ancient times, similar things had happened like this without exception. But many Yuzhong City was horrified to find that there was a huge problem with their dimensional wall system. This system suddenly could not accept the input of sword essences from other sword bearers. This was no laughing matter. Without the continuous replenishment of the sword essences by the sword bearers, no amount of energy could withstand the continuous attacks of a flood-level Yuan-Ko. According to the intensity of this white dragon's attacks, the energy stored in Yuzhong City's dimensional wall system would be exhausted in 3 days at most. Once the energy was exhausted, the outermost dimensional wall system would collapse. Without the protection of the dimensional wall, one could imagine what kind of disaster the people in the ordinary district would suffer. After discovering this, Yuzhong City began to take urgent action. After a series of inspections, they found that there was a problem with the core of Yuzhong City's superdimensional wall system. 3 years ago, Yuan-Ko used the quantum teleportation array to invade the core area. Then, the universe-level Yuan-Ko Loki went straight to the control core of Yuzhong City's superdimensional wall system in an attempt to completely destroy the entire superdimensional wall system. Sword Immortal Cloudy Sky led his disciple Gohan and the freedom-level Misaka Mikoto to fight Loki in the core area. In the end, they defeated and killed Loki, protecting the safety of Yuzhong City. At that time, the staff also inspected the condition of the control core. They found that apart from a part of the Emperor alloy missing, the control core did not suffer much damage. However, now that the Emperor-type dimensional crystals were almost extinct, it was impossible to repair the lost Emperor alloy. Therefore, after the staff found that the core control area was operating normally, they ignored the lost Emperor alloy. After all, the Emperor alloy was only used to protect the control core. It did not affect the function of the control core. The existence of the Emperor alloy itself did not affect the operation of the superdimensional wall system. However, the moment of carelessness caused a huge problem. No one would have thought that Imperial alloy was missing a part of its grounding system. Misaka Mikoto's electromagnetic energy still existed in the remaining Imperial alloy. Imperial alloy turned into the world's most expensive battery, storing the energy that Misaka Mikoto had left in the battery. This electricity formed a strong magnetic field that continuously interfered with the internal control system of the Emperor alloy. In the end, part of the system completely collapsed. This collapsed part of the system happened to be the system that received sword elements from other sword holders. This was the reason why Yuzhong City's superdimensional wall system could no longer replenish sword elements. This was a subtle process. Therefore, the system was still operating 3 years after the end of the battle. However, the day before the arrival of the White Dragon, the system collapsed at the perfect time. To repair the damaged superdimensional wall system, the superdimensional wall system had to be shut down. Otherwise, there was no way to repair it. In the past, when faced with such a situation, Yuzhong City would secretly transfer a large number of sword holders back and use their bodies to protect the safety of Yuzhong City. They would then shut down the superdimensional wall system and repair it as soon as possible. Generally speaking, when the Yuan-Ko forces found out that the superdimensional wall system was shut down for repair, the superdimensional wall system would have been repaired and reactivated. Now, a flood-level Yuan-Ko was outside. How could Yuzhong City shut down the superdimensional wall system to repair it? They had to find a way to kill or drive away this white dragon. Otherwise, when the superdimensional wall system collapsed, the other Yuan Ko would realize that there was a big problem with the superdimensional wall system. Those Yuan Ko who were constantly trying to destroy humanity would not hesitate to launch a large-scale attack on Yuzhong City. By then, the crisis that Yuzhong City would face would probably be even more terrible than 3 years ago. However, Yuzhong City's high-end forces could not deal with this flood-level Yuan Ko. They needed at least 10 or more immortal sword holders or emperor sword holders. However, the other base cities refused to help Yuzhong City because the danger they were facing was not at the lowest level. As a result, the situation had completely formed an endless loop that was difficult to solve. What about London City? When Longsure Jindi came to Yuzhong City last time, didn't he promise us that he would protect the safety of Yuzhong City? Since Yanjing City could not be counted on, Shi Juyuan could only pin his hopes on Longsure Jindi. The secretary hesitated for a moment and said, Longsure Jindi sent a message saying that the 2 flood-level Yuan Ko of the Palace of Heroes are wandering around London City. Once he leaves, he will definitely be attacked by the 2 Yuan Ko, so Longsure Jindi can't leave. Excuses. These are all excuses, Shi Juyuan said resentfully. The 2 flood-level Yuan Ko of the Palace of Heroes are watching outside London City every day. Did Longsure Jindi leave London City? I understand. Mu Shue's sword spirit, who had suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Gahan, suddenly screamed, Longsure Jindi is retaliating against us. Because of that damn Gahan, Longsure Jindi's crown prince lost face in front of everyone. So Longsure Jindi also hates our Yuzhong City. That's why he is unwilling to help us. Hey, this kind of thing can't be said without evidence. Longsure Jindi can't be so petty, the somewhat weak sword immortal Ling Su said. Not necessarily. I think what Mu Shue's sword spirit said is very reasonable. If Longsure Jindi doesn't come to us, the root cause is this Gahan. If we can find a way to appease Longsure Jindi will definitely come to help us, Shi Jiyuan said gloomily. Elder Shi, may I ask how you think we can appease Longsure Jindi? The tiger roar sword spirit asked in a strange tone. If we can find a way to hand Gahan over to Longsure Jindi to deal with, then Longsure Jindi will definitely appease his anger, Shi Jiyuan said, as if it was a matter of course. That's good. Now that Gahan has disappeared without a trace, where will you find Gahan and hand him over to Longsure Jindi? The tiger roar sword spirit asked again. Well, although Gahan is not here, isn't his disciple still here? Shi Jin smiled faintly. Master is in the wrong, and the disciple should naturally bear some responsibility. I think it would be better to let our pavilion master Lisihua go to London to apologize to Longsure Jindi, and then accept Longsure Jindi's punishment on behalf of her master. In this way, Longsure Jindi will have a way out, and will naturally help us. After saying this, Shi Jiyuan cast his gaze on Lisihua, who was sitting in the corner without saying a word, like a puppet. Chapter 1083. Pavilion Master Lu Shihua, what do you think? Shi Jiyuan looked at Lu Shihua fiercely and asked, What do you mean? Do I have the right to speak in Yuzhong City? Lu Shihua raised his head coldly. Speak. What do you want me to do? It seems that our pavilion master, Lu Shihua, isn't taking the meeting seriously. How can he be distracted in such an important meeting? Shi Jiyuan snorted coldly. It's because of your master's despicable behavior that Longsure Jindi isn't willing to help us. Therefore, I hope that you can go to London and apologize to Longsure Jindi on behalf of your master and accept his punishment. This way, Longsure Jindi will be willing to help us drive away this Yuan Ko. How can you do this? When Lu Shihua heard this, his hair stood on end. Master has been guarding Shanghai Pass for 3 years, and he is the hero who killed the Grand Wizard. Why should the Sword Committee let Master stay in Shanghai Pass for another 3 years? Why should the Sword Spirit stop Master from leaving? Moreover, it was the Sword Spirit who sealed Master's Purple Palace first. Master only retaliated a little. The sword spirit of the Gue Palace was in the wrong first. Why should my master apologize to him? Lu Shihua refuted loudly. It's fine if you want me to do this or that, but it's impossible for me to apologize to the sword spirit on behalf of my master today. What do you mean the sword spirit's fault? It was the sword committee's decision to let your master guard Shanghai pass for another 3 years. What right does your master have to refuse the sword committee's order? It was your master who didn't obey the order, so the sword spirit stopped him. Not only did your master not surrender, but he also tried to resist and humiliated the sword spirit. Don't you know that this humiliation is also a humiliation to His Majesty Jindi? Lu Shihua was so angry that he couldn't speak. That's my master's business, not mine. If you have the ability, ask my master to apologize. It has nothing to do with me. How can it have nothing to do with you? Why don't you take a look at what you've done for the past 3 years? Look, during the time you were in charge of the sword garret was in a mess, and the number of new sword bearers in Yuzhong City has been decreasing year by year. This is all your fault, and you should make up for it. Lu Shihua, if you still regard yourself as the sword pavilion master of Yuzhong City, then show the responsibility of a sword pavilion master and sacrifice a little bit of your insignificant dignity for the safety of Yuzhong City. What qualifications do you have to be the sword pavilion's pavilion master? Sure, Juyuan's words were like a sharp knife, digging into Lu Shihua's heart. You finally revealed your true purpose. It turns out that you've said so much just to pull me down from the position of sword pavilion master. Lu Shihua sneered and stood up. Now that things have come to this, I don't want to talk to you anymore. If you have the ability, then kill me and let your people take the position of sword pavilion master. Otherwise, don't even think about making me give up my position. Don't forget the rules of the sword pavilion. Unless I, as the sword pavilion master, take the initiative to give up my position to the sword committee, your people can forget about inheriting the position of sword pavilion master. I can't be bothered to attend this meeting. There are still a lot of things to do in the sword pavilion. Forgive me for not accompanying you. Lu Shihua said as she walked directly to the door of the meeting room. She didn't want to pay any more attention to these disgusting people. Close the door. Let's see who has the ability to leave here. Sure, Juyuan shouted. The 2 sword bearers standing guard at the door immediately closed the door of the meeting room, locking Lu Shihua in the meeting room. Sure, Juyuan, what are you doing? Don't forget that I'm the sword pavilion master. Do you want to offend your superior? Lu Shihua was so angry that her face was distorted. She turned her head and shouted at Shi Jun. Elder Shi, you've gone too far. Lu Shihua is still the sword pavilion master. Why do you have to stand in her way? The roaring tiger sword spirit also stepped forward. It was a pity that apart from the roaring tiger sword spirit, no other spirit sword bearers stepped forward, including the Xian sword spirit. All of these spirit sword bearers who had once been indebted to Lu Lei remained silent at this moment. It was as if they couldn't see this. You guys, seeing the behavior of its former companions, the sword spirit tiger's roar was so angry that its teeth were trembling. However, it was useless. The sword pavilion master can't get over it right now. Let's help her get over it. Shi Juyuan smiled. Then, he turned to Sword Immortal Ling Su and said, Chairman, please open the Void Gate now and send Pavilion Master Lu Shihua to the Yuyang Fortress. I've already prepared a convoy there to escort our sword pavilion to London City. I'm sure Pavilion Master Lu Shihua will understand on the way there. Hearing Shi Juyuan's words, Sword Immortal Ling Su hesitated. To be honest, Shi Juyuan's arrogant attitude made Sword Immortal Ling Su very unhappy. However, Shi Juyuan controlled the local faction in Yuzhong City. If Sword Immortal Ling Su couldn't get Shi Juyuan's help, he might not even be able to give orders outside the headquarters. Chairman, I think you can take over the position of Dean of Yuzhong University. This way, the younger generation of Yuzhong City can receive guidance from you. This way, we'll have a better and brighter future. Shi Juyuan suddenly whispered in Sword Immortal Ling Su's ear. Sword Immortal Ling Su instantly understood. This was a deal. as long as he agreed to send Lu Shihua to London City. The local faction, represented by Shi Juin, would be willing to hand over the management of Yuzhong University to him. An ordinary position was one thing, but Yuzhong University was indeed very important. This meant that the future swordsmen of Yuzhong City's younger generation would be his students. After 7 or 8 years, when these students had all grown up, he would be able to establish a foundation in Yuzhong City. This was very important for Sword Immortal Ling Su to integrate into Yuzhong City. And this was not something that Shi Juyuan would lose out on. The dean of Yuzhong University was originally the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit, the last nail that Lu Lei had left in Yuzhong City. As long as he united with Sword Immortal Ling Su's power to remove this nail, then the local faction in Yuzhong City would be completely under his command. He would also make a huge profit. I'm ashamed. Originally, it was my task to deal with this Yuan Ko. It's a pity that it's too powerful. I can only trouble Pavilion Master Lu Shihua to make a trip. Sword Immortal Ling Su nodded and reached out to open a void gate. I'm not leaving. Don't even think about making me leave. Lu Shihua suddenly ran toward the window of the conference room, tried to escape through the window. He believed that as long as he left the conference room, these people would not dare to use force on him in public. However, Lu Shihua was only an ancient sword-rank sword wielder, and everyone present was at least a famed sword-rank sword wielder. Lu Shihua had barely taken a step when he was caught by Mu Shui's sword spirit. Then, Shi Jiyuan's hands flew up and down at the same time, performing a very complicated hand gesture. When this hand gesture was completed, a sealing talisman was placed on Lu Shihua's chest. All the sword essence in Lu Shihua's body was instantly sealed, and he became a normal person. The Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit wanted to stop this from happening, but it was firmly held back by the other spirit sword wielder around it. It could only watch as everything unfolded. Mu Shui's sword spirit personally escort him to London City. Make sure not to let him escape on the way, Shi Juin said to the Mu Shui sword spirit. The Mu Shui sword spirit nodded proudly and grabbed Lu Shihua into the void gate. Then, the void gate closed, and the conference room returned to silence. Only the Roaring Tiger sword spirit continued to shout, "You will regret this." If Gohan knew that you treated his disciple like this, he would definitely not let you go. Him? Shi Jun revealed a disdainful smile. His Zifu has been sealed, and he is now just an ordinary person. I'm guessing that he must be hiding in a corner, shivering. Maybe he has already died in the hands of Yuan Ko. I actually hope that he will appear in front of me, so that I can send him and his disciple to see Long Shi Jindi. Oh, that's right. I see that the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit's mood is somewhat unstable. You must be very busy recently. It must be because you have been worrying too much about the matters of Yuzhong University that your sword essence hasn't improved much. I think it's better to go out and practice with those Yuan Ko, so that you won't rust in Yuzhong City. Our Yuzhong City is still waiting for the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit to become an immortal sword-level sword-bearer, Shi Juin said with a face full of smiles. You despicable villain. You actually took advantage of Yuzhong City's crisis to do this kind of stupid thing. Sooner or later, Yuzhong City will be destroyed in the hands of a beast like you. Let me go. If you still love the brotherly affection of the past, then let me go. The Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit broke free from the 3 spirit sword-level sword bearers who were holding him down. Don't worry, the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit, don't have the ability to teach this old guy a lesson. I also don't want to be the dean of Yuzhong University. But remember, there will be people who will come to find you for revenge. At that time, all of you will be accomplices. With that, the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit strode out of the conference room with his head held high. From then on, he didn't step into Yuzhong City Sword Committee for a long time. Good move, Elder Shi. Seeing that Shi Juyuan had easily gotten rid of his 2 biggest opponents in this crisis, Sword Immortal Ling Su couldn't help but clap his hands in admiration. Now that those who should go have gone, I wonder if Elder Shi can come up with a way to get rid of that flood-level Yuan Ko for our Yuzhong City. Shi Jueyuan was stunned for a moment. Didn't I say that as long as we hand Lu Shihua over to Long Shi will help us? AI. It will take at least 10 days from Yiyang Fortress to London. By the time Lu Shihua arrives in London, I'm afraid that our Yuzhong City's dimensional protection wall will have been destroyed by this Yuan Ko. Sword Immortaling, Su shook his head. So, I hope that Elder Shi can think of a way to deal with the strategy just now. Even if we can't get rid of this Yuan Ko, we can at least delay it for 10 days until Long Shi takes action. This, Shi Jueyuan said awkwardly for a long time, but he still couldn't come up with a proper strategy. This old man can't do anything. This old man really can't think of any way. Chapter 1084. Shang Yi, who was slumped in his seat like a pile of mud, felt that the past 2 days were like a dream. It was as if he was flying in the air all the time. His whole body felt soft and light. At this time, Shang Yi did not want to complain. He just wanted to return to Yuzhong City alive. That was all. Fortunately, Gu Xianyuan's driving skills were much better than her brother Gu Han's driving skills. After 2 days of flying at high speed, there were no accidents at all. The entire journey was as smooth as if they were driving on a wide road. After Shang Yi did not know how long the Yanhuang 3008 had been driving for, the speed of the car began to slow down. Finally, it slowly came to a stop. What's wrong? Shang Yi raised his head curiously. Through the window, he saw the towering and wide city walls. Tears rolled down his eyes uncontrollably. Great, he finally saw the city walls of Yuzhong City. He, Shang Yi, had finally returned alive. When they left, there were more than a dozen people in the team. But when they returned, there were only 4 people left. Gu Xianyuan had joined them halfway. Of the companions who had set off with them, except for 2 who had gone missing, the rest were dead. Only Shang Yi, Chu Hanming, and Zuozong were left alive. However, Shang Yi did not have much time to lament over what he had encountered during this period of time, because in the next second, a series of dragon roars rang through Shang Yi's head. The thunder dragon that he had met once was now hovering above Yuzhong City. Countless lightning bolts fell from the sky around her, and each lightning bolt was targeting Yuzhong City below her. However, before the lightning could reach the city, it was blocked by the dimensional wall that enveloped Yuzhong City. It stirred up ripples like water on the dimensional wall. It stopped, except inspection. Several sword-wielding guards at the gate of Yuzhong City said nervously. Anyone would feel nervous when lightning kept falling from above. Because of the appearance of this lightning dragon, the entire Yuzhong City had entered a state of high alert. Although the dimensional wall was still in place, and Yuzhong City was temporarily safe, who knew if the other Yuan Ko would receive the news and launch another full-scale attack on Yuzhong City? Ruhai, it's me. I'm Shang Yi. Shang Yi, who was following behind Gu Xianyuan, seemed to recognize this guard, and immediately rushed up and said with some excitement, "Big brother Shang Yi, you're back. Didn't I hear that you went out to hunt for treasures?" Sure enough, the guard recognized Shang Yi. The 2 of them hugged each other excitedly. After a while, Shang Yi sighed and said, "Don't mention it. Let alone treasure hunting, I almost lost my life. If it weren't for Miss Xianyuan, I'm afraid we wouldn't be able to see each other in this lifetime. Come on, it's not a good thing to come back. Maybe the only thing that awaits us is death." The guard bitterly smiled. Why is there only one lightning dragon? What about the other Yuan Ko? Gu Xianyuan suddenly interrupted and asked, "Beauty, you have no idea. From the beginning to the end, there was only one Yuan Ko. None of the other Yuan Kos appeared. It's as strange as seeing a ghost." The guard replied, "Then why did Lu Shihua tell me that Yuzhong City is in danger? The dimensional barrier will be broken in 2 or 3 days at most." Gahan felt even more strange. If there is only one Hong-level Yuan Ko, Yuzhong City would have no problem holding on for 3 years. How could it not hold on for 3 days? He had risked great danger to run in the jungle and almost lost his life. "Beauty, you have no idea." This time, It was a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse. Everything happened together. The core system of our Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier has a problem. As a result, it can't accept the sword element replenishment from our sword bearers. It can only consume the stored energy of the system. I heard that the current energy can only last for 2 or 3 hours at most before all the energy of the dimensional barrier is exhausted. Now, Yuzhong City's emergency system has been activated, and the ordinary people in Yuzhong City have all hidden underground. You guys came back just in time. Otherwise, in half an hour, all the guards would have to retreat to the core area. Be it ordinary people or sword bearers, no one will be left in the normal area. I can only hope that the medium-sized dimensional barrier in the core area can withstand the attack of this Yuan Ko. The guard sighed and said, I see, but why didn't Lu Shihua tell me about this? Gohan became even more confused as he solved one of his doubts. In fact, Lu Shihua was dragged to a meeting by the Sword Council before he could finish his call. Afraid that Gohan's whereabouts would be exposed if he answered the call, Lu Shihua could only hang up in a hurry and did not tell Gohan everything. At this time, the energy of the outermost super-dimensional barrier system was almost depleted by Kana Kamui. Therefore, Yuzhong City had all the ordinary people escape into the emergency system in advance. The remaining sword bearers could only rely on the other dimensional barrier system in the core area to resist. This dimensional barrier system was not damaged, so it could still withstand Kana Kamui's attack. However, the total energy of the dimensional barrier system in the core area was far less than the large dimensional barrier system outside. Also, there was a limit to the amount of sword element that could be replenished per second. Whether it could last long under the attack of the flood-class Yuan Ko, only God knew. And even if the core area could last long, the emergency system underground might not. Once the flood-class dragon launched an attack on the normal area, even if the ordinary people hid in the underground shelter system, there was no guarantee of absolute safety. Otherwise, Gohan's parents would not have died in the hands of the Transformer when they had clearly hidden in the underground shelter system. Whatever, I have to enter the core area as soon as possible, Gohan said anxiously. A flood-class Yuan Ko, even if Gohan, who had transformed into Guxin Yuan, went all out and used all his strength without reservation, it was impossible to defeat a flood-class Yuan Ko. This had already exceeded the ability of a famous sword-level sword-bearer. At this time, there was only one urgent matter for Gohan, and that was to become a spirit sword-level sword-bearer as soon as possible. Only then could he completely exert his sword element to the extreme so that he could drive away this flood-class Yuan Ko. Before becoming an immortal sword-level sword-bearer, it was impossible for Gohan to have the strength to kill a flood-class Yuan Ko. Being able to find a way to drive it away was already Gohan's greatest limit. Therefore, Gohan couldn't wait to enter Yuzhong City and synchronize with a spirit sword-level sword mistress in the core area to become a spirit sword-level sword-bearer before the outer super-large dimensional wall was destroyed by this thunder and lightning dragon. Beauty, I know you don't want to stay here and take risks, but you still have to go through the basic procedures. Just swipe your personal terminal here, and you can go in, the guard said. This was just a simple routine check. Any sword bearer entering the Bay City had to go through such a check. There was nothing special or strange about it. But this sentence hit Gohan's heart like a bolt from the blue. If Gohan swiped his personal terminal here at this time, his identity as Gohan would be exposed. If he was still a male Gohan at this time, then he would be exposed. Gohan was not afraid that Yuzhong City would dare to do anything to him. But the problem now was that Gohan was using a female body. It was impossible to borrow or replace a personal terminal. Each personal terminal was bound together through DNA authentication. Then, the news of Gohan's sex change into a woman would inevitably spread. At that time, even if Gohan's skin was as thick as a city wall, it would still be impossible for him to live in Yuzhong City. For a moment, Gohan unexpectedly fell into hesitation. Brother, our personal terminals are all broken. I don't know if we can still pass the scan. On the other side, Shang Yi asked with some concern. He had never experienced a personal terminal being broken. It's okay. Our scanning device is specially made to target the core chip of the personal terminal. Unless your core chip is also damaged, then you can only stay in the core area's isolation room for a while. After the laboratory carries out DNA authentication for you and reapplies for a new personal terminal, you can be released, the guard explained. That's okay. Our personal terminal's external communication system is broken, but the other functions are still normal. The core chip should be fine, Shang Yi said with a sigh of relief. Then, he took the broken personal terminal and scanned it on the scanning device. As expected, it passed the scan. Looks like I have to destroy the entire personal terminal first. This conversation was heard by Gahan. This was the only thing he could do now. He could only completely destroy his personal terminal and sneak into the core area under the name of reapplying for a personal terminal. When he reached the core area, he would wait for an opportunity to slip away. He believed that these people would not be able to stop him. But this way, Gahan would become a person with no identity. Not only would he be unable to use most of the social functions, he would not even be able to enter Jiang'a, but this was not important. The current Jiang'a master was his disciple Lu Shihua. As long as he said the word, he could move freely in Jiang'a. It was not a big deal whether he had a personal terminal or not. Thinking of Lu Shihua, Gahan's heart was filled with worry. Ever since he communicated with Lu Shihua that day, Gahan had sent out 3 communication invitations to Lu Shihua, but he did not get any response. It was as if Lu Shihua's personal terminal was also broken. He could only hope that she was too busy and did not have time to care about him. After figuring this out, Gu Xinyuan did not hesitate to press his finger on the personal terminal on his wrist. Then his finger shot out a needle-like sword chi. The entire personal terminal instantly emitted a few wisps of white smoke, and then it was completely destroyed from the inside out. The core chip and whatnot were all burned. Chapter 1085. Just as Gahan completely destroyed the personal terminal on his wrist, the entire world suddenly began to tremble, as if the heavens and earth were collapsing. Gahan and the others immediately raised their heads subconsciously, looking at the giant white dragon in the sky. Countless scales on the wings of the giant white dragon shot out like machine gun bullets, and the dimensional barrier of Yuzhong City was instantly forced to withstand the impact of tens of thousands of scales. Every scale that hit the dimensional barrier released a mushroom cloud of smoke like a missile, creating continuous ripples on the dimensional barrier. If it was just one collision and explosion, it would have been fine, but when tens of thousands of explosions and collisions occurred on the dimensional barrier at the same time, the remaining energy of the entire dimensional barrier poured out like an avalanche. Not good. If this goes on, the dimensional barrier won't last for more than a few minutes. We have to get out of here. Gu Xuanyuan's expression suddenly changed. She no longer cared about the inspection and directly jumped into the driver's seat of the Yanhuang 3008 beside her. She shouted at Shang Yi, Chu Hanming, and the few guards, "Hurry up and get in the car, or all of you will die here." "No, you haven't passed the inspection. This is not in line with the procedures." Before the guard could finish his sentence, he was dragged into the Yanhuang 3008 by Shang Yi, who was beside him. "My big brother, let's not bother about the inspection now." The Yanhuang 3008 was originally designed for 4 people, and now, with the addition of 2 guards, it suddenly became a little crowded. However, Gu Xinyuan couldn't care less. She stepped hard on the accelerator with her right foot, and the Yanhuang 3008 broke through the guard's sentry post, roaring towards the core area of Yuzhong City. "Oh my God, that's so fast. Pretty lady, you're speeding. You're breaking the traffic rules." The guard was so frightened by the speed of the Yanhuang 3008 that he screamed. At the same time, he didn't forget to tell Gu Xinyuan that she was speeding. Just as the guard was screaming, Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier system finally could not withstand such a crazy bombardment. Countless cracks spread across the dimensional barrier, and finally, the entire dimensional barrier system made a crisp shattering sound, and then completely turned into nothingness. The entire Yuzhong city had become a defenseless city. The moment Yuzhong city's dimensional barrier broke, countless pairs of eyes hiding in the dark around Yuzhong city bloomed with shock and confusion. These were all spies sent by some of the major forces of Yuan-Ko. They had already heard that a flood-level Yuan-Ko was launching an attack on Yuzhong city's dimensional barrier. But these Yuan-Ko forces, who had been tortured by the dimensional barrier system, knew that a flood-level Yuan-Ko's strength could not do anything to the superdimensional barrier system of the base city. The energy consumption of this flood-level Yuan-Ko was not as fast as the superdimensional barrier system could recover. Therefore, although these major forces wanted to break through Yuzhong city's defense, they still suppressed their thoughts. After all, every major attack on a base city had to be planned carefully, and at the same time, they had to mobilize as many Yuan-Ko forces as possible to launch an attack. If they rashly cooperated with this flood-level Yuan-Ko, not only would they not be of any help, but they would also sacrifice their own subordinates in vain. Therefore, these Yuan-Ko forces didn't pay much attention to the Thunder Dragon's attack, nor did they dispatch their own forces to coordinate with the Thunder Dragon's attack. In their opinion, this attack would be futile, and it would be impossible for them to gain anything. However, these major forces still placed their spies around Yuzhong City, always paying attention to the development of the battle. As a result, at this moment, all the major forces of Yuan-Ko were stunned. They did not expect that this flood-level Yuan-Ko would actually break through Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier system. The entire city was exposed to all of Yuan-Ko without any protection. Are the sword-bearers in Yuzhong City crazy? Why don't they replenish the energy of the dimensional barrier system? The leaders of these major forces of Yuan-Ko complained at the same time. For the first time, they began to hate the sword-bearers of Yuzhong City for not defending with all their might. However, while complaining, these major forces also began to frantically mobilize their subordinates' forces. This was a great opportunity. Once Yuzhong City's dimensional defense system was breached, it would take at least 24 hours for it to be reactivated. This was the best chance for the Yuan bandits to attack Yuzhong City. In Yuzhong City, the situation of Gohan and the others became even more difficult. Previously, with the protection of the dimensional barrier, although the lightning dragon scales were powerful, they were all blocked and did not harm Gohan and the others' hovercraft. However, when the dimensional barrier was broken, these scales smashed into various buildings in Yuzhong City like missiles, and the entire city became a sea of fire in an instant. While the Yanhuang 3008 controlled by Gohan continued to advance toward the core area, it also had to avoid the scales falling from the sky. Once hit directly by these scales, Gohan might be fine, but the sword-bearers of Yanhuang 3008 were bound to be in danger. Damn it! If only the quantum teleportation formation system had not been shut down. Otherwise, we would have directly returned to the core area. Shang Yi gritted his teeth as he saw the scales falling from the sky. Because of the previous attack on the quantum teleportation formation system, Yuzhong City had very simply removed all the quantum teleportation formations. This stupid, one-size-fits-all approach had directly led to the current consequences. The sword-bearers who were still in the normal area had to return to the core area of Yuzhong City via hovercraft. Many sword-bearers were hit by the scales on the way back and sent into the sky by the huge explosion. With the power of these scales' explosion, unless it was an ancient sword-level sword-bearer with more than 10,000 sword elements, with the strength of the protective shield of an ancient sword-level sword-bearer, it would be instantly consumed by the explosion of these scales and eventually become a bloody corpse. This beast. Shang Yi looked at the white dragon in the sky and cursed angrily. There's no need to scold her. Gu Xinyuan did not even look at the dragon. She quickly dodged the scales falling from the sky from all angles as she said calmly, "This is a matter of course for her. And for us, killing her is also a matter of course." After saying this, the scale bombs in the sky instantly stopped. It seemed like such a skill was also very energy-consuming for the lightning dragon. After breaking through Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier system, the dragon took the initiative to stop such attacks. Without the damage of these scale bombs, the Yanhuang 3008 could also move at a faster speed towards the core area. Strange. What is this Yuan Ko trying to do? Shang Yi saw through the open skylight of the Yanhuang 3008 that after the lightning dragon destroyed Yuzhong City's dimensional barrier system, it did not wildly destroy the city like most of the Yuan Ko. At the same time, it thought of ways to kill the humans hiding in the underground shelters. After breaking through the dimensional barrier system, the lightning dragon seemed to have lost its target. It floated sluggishly in the air and did not do anything. I'm afraid she's looking for food, Gu Xinyuan thought as she drove. Have you guys forgotten what happened after she was freed from the seal? Only then did Shang Yi remember that the first thing the lightning dragon did after being freed from the seal was to look for food. It even swallowed Li Xiangtian into its mouth, but when it realized that it did not taste good, it spat Li Xiangtian out. But what does this dragon want to eat? Doesn't she not like to eat humans? Shang Yi asked curiously. There must be something that only Yuzhong City has attracted this dragon. Gu Xinyuan sighed. Look, that dragon is moving again. This time, even Gu Xinyuan couldn't help but raise his head to observe the movements of the lightning dragon. In the end, he discovered that the lightning dragon no longer cared about the normal area. Instead, it flew above the core area, and with a dive, it was ready to pounce into the core area. In the end, the lightning dragon was naturally blocked by the dimensional barrier system in the core area. Why is there one here too? How annoying. After the lightning dragon let out a hungry dragon's roar in the voice of a Lolita, lightning once again fell from the sky and began to wear down the core area's dimensional barrier system. Looks like the thing this dragon is looking for is in the core area. Gu Xinyuan drove the Yanhuang 3008 directly to the core area's gate with a drift. This gate was very familiar to Gahan. This was the gate that Gahan had walked through when he led 1,000 sword-bearers back to the core area to fight. However, at that time, Gahan had 1,000 menacing sword-bearers behind him. Now, Gahan only had a hovercraft, and he could not appear with his real identity. He could only appear here as Gu Xinyuan. All of you, get out of the car quickly. No crowding. All sword-bearers immediately approach the nearest sword essence absorption system and input sword essence into the dimensional barrier system. At the gate of the core area, dozens of sword-bearers and their sword mistresses stood guard, guiding the sword-bearers and ordinary people who were escaping into the core area from all directions. I'll return the car to you. Keep it properly. Chu Hanming suddenly felt a key placed in his palm, and then Gu Xinyuan was like a beautiful fairy, passing through the crowd in no time, and entered the depths of the core area. It was as if the surging crowd that he couldn't intervene in did not exist at all. So beautiful. Looking at Gu Xuanyuan's back, Chu Hanming said in a daze, I've decided I must take her as my wife. Chu Hanming secretly made up his mind. Even if he had to give up everything, he would marry Gu Xinyuan and become an enviable immortal couple. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.